Hey, this is David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown himself, and I'll see you at the Tampa Morgue.
Drop on by the Clown Cafe, your favorite meals on wheels. The menu is disgusting and it's full of special deals. Nothing here is good for you, so grab yourself a tray, 'cause food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Gobble up your order quick before it runs away, 'cause food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe. Why not visit after school and have yourselves a bite? An appetizing appetizer certain to delight. We haven't done it right unless it makes your teeth decay, 'cause food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe. The grub is downright gruesome, but your appetite's obey, 'cause food's a little funny. Food's a little funny. Food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe.
This is Tony, and you're listening to the Tampa Morgue. Thank you for joining us, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Ed Webb. What is up, dude?
What's up, Mr. Anderson? How are you, brother?
I'm doing good, man. It's October, and I'm really excited about the guest we have coming on very soon. We'll be introducing him in a moment. I just wanted to thank everybody who listens and let you know that, you can always write us at the Tampa Morgue at gmail.com. You could always check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and all that stuff, and we'll give this information out at the end of the show again. But we're pretty much every podcast platform you can find us. So like I said, we appreciate everything. Also Facebook, we really don't do much on the Facebook, but we need to start building that up. We just, we really haven't put much.
Instagram.
And Instagram, yeah, definitely. Instagram's probably where we're most active, I guess. We don't have a Twitter yet or anything, which we may. But we're going to get to our guests in a couple minutes, which, this when it's me and Ed, it's always a clown show. So, but tonight it's definitely a little bit of a clown show, right, Ed?
Yeah, this one's going to be one for the record books, I think. Definitely, I was excited when you had told me we had this guest coming on, and not only was I excited, Bryce, my son, was absolutely ecstatic, which is crazy. I tell him all these band guys, and he's like, yeah. But this person definitely piqued his interest. So, yeah, this is going to be epic by major proportions, I believe.
Well, this character, I mean, me and you have spoken about it, and we'll speak to him about it, really has, we were around during the 80s and 90s, and we've seen a lot of horror movies and a lot of the horror icons and stuff, but I haven't seen a stronger presence, character-wise. I can't tell you. It's been a long time. And, we're going to get to him in a minute. I just want to mention really fast, once in a while we want to mention a few shows that are going to be happening in the Tampa area or Orlando area, or even guests that we have on the show that we kind of want to give a shout out to support-wise. The Vincent Crowley Band, I saw booked a show at October 28th in Rockland, Mass. at the Porter Club with Putrid Christ, Horror, Fatal Sacrament. The doors for that are at 6:30, and we had Vincent on the show not too long ago, and I would definitely check him out if I was anybody in that area. We also have Druid Lord is playing with Withering Earth, Father Defiled at the Conduit in Orlando on Saturday, October 14th. The doors are at 8. And then I saw Friday, Sorcerer is back together, and they're doing a CD release show at the Brass Mug with Pigpen and Consume the Wolf. And there's a few other bands. I can't remember the names, but October 20th, 2023, that'll be. So, yeah, we definitely are looking forward to this one. And without further ado, tonight we are joined by a guy that I was telling Ed about this earlier. We did Halloween here last year in Lithuania. We spend our time between Tampa, Florida, and Lithuania while the kids are in school. We have 2 younger children. And we had yeah, sorry, we had a Halloween thing here. We had a bunch of kids come to the house and stuff. We had a shitload of decorations, and while we were doing this, we had kids. They were all flocking towards this one item that we had, and we have several. We actually bought a lot of items back from Spirit Halloween because they don't have those here. Um, and a lot of kids were flocking around this one thing we had, and it was the Art the Clown mask. And they were just saying to each other, "That's that clown from that movie." And they were mesmerized. You could tell this fear, almost like a Ed. You remember when we were kids and we had like the Freddy Krueger, right? When you were little, you knew who Freddy Krueger was. Like,
You saw the knives, you knew it was Freddy. You
yeah,
saw the mask, you knew it was Jason. You
yeah, it was
knew.
like a legendary thing. You kind of said to each other,
Yeah.
"There's that movie where this guy," and they were all like that with the Art the Clown mask. So tonight we are joined by a very, very talented actor, and we are extremely happy to have him on here. I know October is busy as shit for him. Please welcome David Howard Thornton.
Hey. Thank you. Try the
It's almost
veal.
like it's almost like you knew the clap was coming, right?
Yeah, it's almost like I knew. It's like we've done this before.
Yeah, exactly. So you grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, which was also known as the Rocket City, and for you that
Yes.
also has ties with your father worked for NASA. Is that correct?
Yeah, my dad worked for NASA for about 40 years on the solid rocket motor program, primarily with the space shuttle. If you ask me what he did, I really can't tell you. If he would try to explain it to me, but it's engineer speak, so I'm like, just tell me you make rocket go boom. I don't know, but yeah, it was him. And then my mom's father worked with the original von Braun team when they were all brought. Well, the German scientists were brought over with Operation Paperclip. He teamed up with von Braun and helped create the first rockets that went to space.
We were saying you actually have a monument in in Huntsville, which is the
Mhm.
gigantic rocket statue, which I think they're I read they were like having trouble keeping it preserved because of the weather. They didn't expect it to be up that long.
Oh, I didn't know that was happening with it, but yeah, that thing's been there since I was a kid. It's the Saturn V rocket that they have out there. It's huge. It's like they decorate it for Christmas every year, like a big Christmas tree and stuff like that too. So that's basically the symbol of Huntsville now. It's like our landmark there. So yeah.
Okay. So, and as a kid, you were like obviously like a lot of us back in the '80s, because I think you were an '80s kid also. Obviously, you were into
Mhm.
the cartoons, comics, and stuff. What kind of
Oh God,
cartoons were
yeah.
you watching then? Because then we had some of the best
Oh
cartoons, I would
man,
say.
I say like we grew up in like probably the best generation for all that kind of stuff. It was absolutely fantastic time to grow up in because like I mean because we're on the cusp of everything. Like we had cartoons and toys, but we also started getting the video games. So it's like we weren't like that the screen generation that you see now where they don't go out and play anymore. We actually got together with our friends, had adventures. We had our action figures, would make adventures with and stuff like that. We had our video games too. We had everything. It was fantastic. But yeah, I was watching like everything, like He-Man, especially GI Joe, Transformers, Mask, which a lot of people forget about. I used
Oh
to
yeah.
love that show. That was fantastic. Of course, Ninja Turtles. I was a huge Ninja Turtle freak back in the day. I was part of the fan club. It's like had the Disney afternoon. Everything. It was great time to grow up in. It's like, man, it's like I kind of feel sorry for the kids now that they don't have that. I mean, they have a lot, but they brought back a lot of the stuff we had as kids.
Well,
Because
you
it's
remember
like
like
that.
Saturday morning cartoons, right? You would always like
Oh,
every
the
kid would
God.
get up, and
best,
that's I mean, you had
the
Super Friends,
best.
Super
um,
Friends, Legion of Doom, man. I mean, come
Oh,
on.
all of that,
yeah,
all that. I
Groovy
mean,
Bullies.
Yeah.
yes. Every Saturday morning, I was getting up like 6 o'clock in the morning, which is like ungodly to me now because I don't get up like around 10 o'clock or something now. But it's like I was up there every single morning watching. I had my box of cereal in my hand. I would just sit there in front of the TV watching Saturday morning cartoons. I especially loved it like every year right before school started or like around that same time. That's when they would start the new season. So that I was always excited about. Oh, what are the new cartoons coming out and stuff like that. It's a great time.
Hell, even the old school like Charlie Brown Halloween and
Yeah,
the Christmas,
yeah, the Rankin
Rudolph, all
Bass.
that shit
Yeah,
that we grew up with now, they don't do
Garfield. I
that
mean, it
no
was just
more.
a whole. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
man, all that
Saturday.
stuff.
yeah. Oh yeah. See now, you can just find all that stuff instantaneously. You can just watch it whenever you want to. Back when we were growing up, you had to wait that one time a year when those would play on TV.
Yep.
Yeah,
just like the Wizard of Oz. That would only come out once a year on TV,
Yep.
and that was an event. Like everybody stayed in that one
Inside
night
of
of the
TV.
year to watch Wizard of Oz. Yep.
I think
That's
if you
when
handed
family was
somebody,
family. That's
yeah.
when
Yeah.
family was family, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think
yeah.
now if you handed someone a TV guide, they wouldn't even know what they would be like. What is this? What is
I
this
know.
shit?
No kidding.
You know?
And plus, the TV guy would be like, so freaking thick now because there are so many channels on TV.
Oh yeah, you're right. No,
exactly.
yeah. And you were also into comics, obviously, which we had back
Oh,
then
yeah.
was like The Dark Knight Returns. You had Daredevil. I mean, there was
Mhm.
what was some of the ones that really that you were into?
Oh, I was especially big into Batman comics or like Spider-Man, but I also like read a lot of like Ninja Turtles as well. I was big into the Ninja Turtles, especially the Archie comics version of Ninja Turtles. It's like I collected all of those. I had like probably like 50, 60 different issues of those.
Well, that's eclectic stuff right there.
Oh yeah, and it was great too because like that was like one of those things like my parents and I bonded over too because my parents loved comic books. So like my dad's generation, that's like he remembers when X-Men and Spider-Man, all that the first issues of all those Marvel comics first came out. He used to have them all, and then my grandmother threw them all away. And I'm like, oh my god, we have had a small fortune there.
Yeah, you know what they're. Yeah, exactly. You know, I remember like what they had, the death of Superman. I remember there was like everyone was going nuts over that. That was like
I was in line that night to get my copy. I still remember the black, plastic case that it came in with the red Superman bloody emblem on it and all that. That was a big deal. That was a big deal. That the whole year leading up to that, that was great.
Well, I think that was like the time period where you had, I remember like driving through, we're both from Jersey, me and Ed, and you would drive through the neighborhood. You had comic book stores, baseball card shops, magic shops. I mean, it was a whole different world. And, I always tell my wife that, 'cause my wife's a little younger. I'm like, yeah, it was totally different. But you were also a big Mel Blanc fan, which, I mean, well, the man of a thousand voices, right? That was a big influence on you.
Yeah. I mean, I really learned about him when the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit first came out because they did a whole behind the scenes featurette on TV of how they made the movie, and they did a whole thing talking about Mel Blanc during that and how he voiced all the Looney Tune characters. And I was like, whoa, one guy does all of those voices. And then I, of course, learned about Dawes Butler and, Don Messick and all those guys that did all the voices for Hanna-Barbera as well. So it's like they're like essentially like 3 or 4 guys, around that time period, especially in like the mid 1900s that were doing all of those voices. And it's like, what an incredibly talented bunch of guys, especially like June Foray and Mel Blanc. I mean, they were just absolutely fantastic, artists.
Yeah, that Mel was definitely like obviously he's a legend, but
he's a god. He's a god to me.
Yosemite Sam. So I mean, he just did so many that you can just get the
Barney Rubble. You can go down the line of all the characters from all the different studios that he voiced. He was everywhere. And I love the story about him, how he was in a coma, and he was brought out of the coma by Bugs Bunny. It was like, someone said, "What's up, Doc?" or something like that to him, and he like snapped out of the coma and it's like, "What's up, Doc?" Just like,
that's awesome.
Came back to be himself. I was like, Bugs Bunny literally saved Mel Blanc's life.
Exactly.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. So you personally got involved with theater at a young age. Your mother got you into it, right? Because you had experienced something that we all know back in the day, the bullies, right?
Oh yeah. Bullies. Those bullies, aren't they great? Insecure assholes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all know them, but this was, your mother also did this to get you out of your shell, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely so. Because at home and around like my friends that outside of school, I was a totally different person. I was always joking around, doing silly things and stuff like that. It's like at school I was very quiet and shy because I went to a new school in 6th grade, so no one knew me there, and I they just saw this short little kid with glasses and braces that was skinny as a rail that sang soprano and sucked at sports. So it's like, in Alabama, you're a very easy target being that way. Because I was a late bloomer. I didn't hit my growth spurt until the summer after my 10th grade year. And so I literally grew 6 inches in 2 weeks time, which, freaked everybody out. Because I also had like 3 grand mal seizures because my whole body just went like, what the fuck?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. So my doctors thought I was going to be like 5'4", 5'5" tallest because like my dad's mom was 4'8", and my mom's dad was like about 5'5", 5'6". So it was like, It was only my dad's father that was the tall one in the family. So it's like I guess I got that one gene.
Yeah, so I wish I got that gene. But so you were
You hit your
so
head a lot, so it's okay.
exactly, yeah, exactly. I don't have to duck too often. But
Yeah.
so you actually had so in third grade, was it true that you had actually worked with John Denver? You had already had a kind of a little experience.
Yeah, that's very true. He was touring around the nation doing concerts and stuff like that, different cities, and he wanted a children's choir because this is a Christmas concert. So he wanted a children's choir to be on stage with him singing different Christmas songs. And so they had auditions, and our children's choir at my church was chosen to have the privilege to sing with him. And he, John Denver, also had a big, huge fascination with NASA. And of course, with my dad being there, my dad had all these ties, so he got a bunch of stuff for John. Got astronauts to sign some stuff for him, and we all signed some stuff for him as well. So I was able to actually really get to know John Denver because I was the one that gave him all that kind of stuff, and he was such a cool man. He was just before the concert, he hung out with all of us, and we were playing ping pong with him and all that. He was just such a kind man. We also taught him. I helped teach him Silent Night and sign language because my aunt was deaf, and I knew a lot of sign language back then. I have forgotten a lot of it now, but I taught him Silent Night and sign language.
That's very cool. Yeah, I read about that. And you were also so with your theater, you also part of Mickey's Xmas Carol, which actually resulted in you
Yeah.
learning how to basically improv on the spot, right? Because you
Yeah.
were, if you can explain that a little bit.
Yeah. Everything started to go wrong on stage. It's like at one part, like the scenery fell down on top of Scrooge, and I think God, it was only a cardboard set,
Would have
because
been
good old,
crushed.
good old school choir budgets. So yeah, all the money goes to the sports programs. But so yeah, it was like it falls down on top of us. I think I said something like, "Ah, Mr. Scrooge, I think we have rats." And then like there's another like we're doing the Cratchit family scene with the meager little small bird that we have to eat. The table broke and like launched the chicken over the audience, and so I was like, oh, well, I guess we're gonna have fast food tonight, folks. I just started like just improvising all kinds of little things just to like get things back on track. And I think that's where I really learned my love for performing, because that was the first time at that school I had people laughing with me instead of at me and making fun of me, and I was the one in control for once, and I loved that feeling. It felt great, and I was like, I want more of this. And so my mom really encouraged me to do a lot more. So that's when I started getting involved with doing community theater, and everything just took off from there.
And so in Huntsville, that was very arts. It was an artsy place, right? There was that
It,
whole
it
scene
really
there.
is. Yeah, it's people don't expect that in Alabama, but Huntsville's a very like progressive city and a very arts minded city. It's just like the local community theater there is fantastic. I mean, there's so many talented individuals. We had their own children's theater there called Fantasy Playhouse Children's Theater, and then we had like Huntsville Community Chorus, which did a lot of musicals. You had Theater Huntsville. We had other theater organizations that came and went over the years as well. So it's a great city for the arts, and you just wouldn't think of that with Alabama. That's something people usually don't think of. It's like it was great. I left because I couldn't make a career out of doing that there.
And you also played piano, right? So you are also
Yeah.
I used to play piano, so you
Yeah,
played.
I played piano, and I used to play handbells as well. I was actually in a handbell choir. Like a tornado went through my hometown. An F4 tornado went through in 1989, destroyed my school and my church. And I was at my church in handbell lessons at the time when it got hit. So I'm very
Oh my
lucky to be
God.
here today because it came through without any warning. All the tornado warnings went off after the tornado had already gone through Huntsville.
Oh shit! Yeah, see,
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never been through a tornado, but I hear they're like we've been through hurricanes and stuff.
Yeah.
I hear tornadoes like one of the most scary, like a freight train, right?
It's absolutely terrifying. I'll never forget that sound. It was just horrifying, absolutely horrifying. And we got trapped in this basement that we were, because the only reason we knew about it, we were able to get down to the basement in time, is because our associate minister was a Hempsey driver. And so his people knew where he was, so they called him and said, "There's a tornado heading towards you right now. Get those kids down to the basement." So we had to run. We got down to the basement underneath our sanctuary the exact moment the tornado hit the church. And we were doing construction work on the church at the time. So all the construction guys were holding the doors shut with all their might while the tornado was hitting the church. Like my mom like dove on top of me, like shielded me with her body. But we ended up getting buried in the basement from all the debris from the construction work. And yeah,
Holy
we had
shit.
a gas leak down there too. And, you know, we couldn't get out. And my choir director, who was also my godfather, was trying to like keep us calm. He's like, okay, because we're all these, we're like 8-9-year-old kids, so he's trying to keep us calm. He's like, let's start singing. So we start singing songs down there, and all of a sudden, this man opens up the door that he had dug us out. He had been out the tornado. He was all badly bloodied up and everything, but he's like, I heard children singing. And so he rescued us, and we got out of that basement. And a few minutes after we left the basement exploded.
Talk about
So
movies,
just,
right
yeah.
there,
Dude,
man.
I was just thinking,
absolutely insane.
I'm writing this down right now. You're going to be starring in my movie, man, because that's fucking killer.
Oh, it's all insane. It's what's even freakier is like if my mom was there at the church the next day for the cleanup, and she went into the sanctuary where we would have been if we hadn't got the warning. And we had this big stained glass window that had these 3 crosses on it, and the main giant cross fell right between where I would have been standing with my handbells if we had remained in there. So it's just like it's one of those. That's one of like my first near death experiences, I guess you could say, where it's like, yeah, I'm meant to be here. And I've always felt like after that moment, I was like, I've had other near death experiences in my life, and over time, I was like, yeah, there's a reason I'm still alive. There's something I'm supposed to do.
That's insane, man. That's
yeah.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure we know what that is.
Yeah. So yeah. And you actually started doing I know you do a lot of, which is awesome. You're a big voiceover guy. You're a big on. When did you start doing voices? I also know you did accents too. But that relates back to your grandfather with the German thing, right?
Oh yeah. Because I grew up around all the German scientists and stuff like that, so I just heard German accents all the time. And it's like, to me, I had no idea like those were some of the greatest minds of our time. And unfortunately, they were ex-Nazis. But it's like that's one of those people who don't understand that those men were forced to work for the Nazis, or else they would die and their families would die. So they gladly came here to the United States after the war, and they all denounced all of that. They're like, no, this is especially von Braun. So, but yeah, it was just these old Germans that just bring me chocolate. So I always heard the accent all the time growing up. So it was a very easy thing for me to have to learn how to, to talk like that, So that was probably one of the first accents I kind of ended up learning how to do that. And like, of course, the English dialects, because I would do a lot of plays that had to have, like Christmas Carol and stuff like that. So I had to speak with many different dialects, and I just snowballed from there. I just discovered I had an ear for learning how to do dialects and voices. But I discovered my voices when I was like in first grade.
You were doing Japanese commercials, right, or something like that?
Yeah. My first big role that I got when I got here to New York City, about a month into living here, I auditioned for something called Voice Asia. And I was basically like the Verizon guy for like a year for this phone company that was in like China, Japan, and I think South Korea. And that was weird. I was just like, Voice Asia. It was like I had to do all these different things. It was weird. It was such a weird thing. It's like, and it was really funny because like there was this one time I was waiting tables at Bubba Gump Shrimp Company when I one of my first jobs here in New York, as I call it, the fourth ring of hell. But but as I had this table of like these Japanese girls, and they every time I come over to the table, they're like, oh, and I was like, oh man, they must be crushing on me or something. And one of them at one point is like, excuse me, sir, we have to ask you, are you a Voice Asia guy? And I'm like, yeah.
Wow.
I was like, Wow, yeah, this is like, yeah, they're like, and all of them are going, oh, voice Asia, voice Asia, voice Asia. I was like, oh my god, this is actually seen by people outside the US. This is amazing. So yeah, that was my first claim to fame.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then oddly enough, like one of my first big voiceover jobs I ever did was for the Real Sex series for HBO,
Oh
and they did
wow.
a
I
whole
remember that. I remember
yeah,
that series.
yeah, they did a segment on the sex industry in Japan. And the Japanese accent was another accent I knew pretty well because my best friend growing up down the street, Haruna, she and her family came from Japan. So I was around, they would speak Japanese in the house all the time, and I'm always like, what did you say? What?
What was that?
Yeah. So that was another accent I just picked up on very early in life. So I had worked, going back to the Real Sex series, I had worked with this studio before, and they remembered how I was with accents because I had done some smaller animated projects with them, and they're like, we can't find an actual actor here that is actually like a Japanese American to do what we need for this commercial, but we know you can do a Japanese accent. Can you come in and do this? And I was like, oh boy, I can, but is that going to be okay? I mean, is this going to be offensive? Because I don't want to seem like I'm trying to do any anything racist here, like, no, 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 you actually do a non, I guess, character, like racist version of you don't do a characterization of the Japanese accent. You can actually do an authentic one. And I'm like, if it's okay with you, sure. There's like, well, it's for HBO. I'm like, okay. Well, if it's okay with the higher ups, so I came in, and it was like myself and everybody in the studio was Japanese, and I was like, I feel so awkward because I get so nervous about doing someone's native accent in front of them because I know how judgmental I am when I hear really bad Southern accents. So it's like, oh God, this is going to be a disaster. I hope I really don't offend these people. I'm just like, oh no, no, no. But the whole entire time it's like, oh, you're doing great. You're doing great. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm like, okay.
They
It's a,
seal of
yeah.
approval. I mean, you can't,
Yeah.
like
But
you're.
that was such an awkward experience because I was like, I really hope I'm not offending anybody.
Yeah, I actually here I when I try to speak Lithuanian with people, I always feel so bad because I'm attempting, which is a big thing here. I'm
Yeah.
trying to do it, but I always feel like insulting people with the way I
Oh, yeah.
pronounce things and stuff. But
It's
yeah,
hard,
actual.
especially with I have such a great appreciation for the Japanese culture anyway. So I was just like, oh man,
Yeah. Well, your mom was she what worked with she was an education teacher, right? And so you got into
yes,
education. So you can tell us
yes,
how you got basically,
yeah,
was that kind of like a roll down like my mom? I like working with kids and
yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm like fourth generation teacher in my family. My great grandfather, before he went to the ministry, was a government teacher. He actually was Senator John Sparkman's government teacher back when he was a kid, and that's why my great grandfather's why Sparkman first became interested in politics. And so there's a long family history between us and the Sparkmans. But my grandmother was a teacher, her sisters were all teachers, and my mom was a special ed teacher. So it naturally fell because when I decided to go, what college I was going to go to, I was debating on getting a theater degree or something else, and I was like, well, theater degree, yeah, acting is not the most stable career path, especially financially. So I don't know if I can support a family, you know, necessarily because it's very rare to actually make it in this industry. But I was like, I love kids. I love educating others because and I come from a family of teachers. So yeah, why don't I go into teaching? I mean, that's something I'm good at. So that's I got my degree in education. But it was my final years in college. My mother passed away from esophageal cancer, and our final conversation with each other was, she said it without saying it directly, but she was like, you've been given a lot of gifts, and I don't want you to waste your gifts. I want you to live your life to the fullest. So don't do what you think you have to do with your life. Do what you really want to do with your life, because you only get one shot at this. And I, it was like a year later when I was in my internship. I was going through a lot of stuff. My dog died, my grandmother died, my good friend committed suicide, and my sister married a homeless man all in a month's time when I went back to school. And so my head was in a really bad place. I was like just downward spiraling, making mistakes left and right because I just was not thinking straight. And I was miserable. I was just very miserable, and I was very unhappy, very depressed. And I was doing story time with my children one day, doing all the little fun voices with the characters in the book. And, I realized in there that I got so much more joy out of entertaining my students than actually teaching them. And I was like, well, this is what I need to do with my life. This is my true calling. It's not education. It's entertaining. So I talked to my dad that night and had a whole rousing speech prepared for him because, he's an engineer, very practical, pragmatic man. And he was like, oh, no, your mom and I always thought you should have been an actor. We just didn't want to tell you what to do with your life. Go ahead and finish up your degree. But, after that, go do what you want to do. At least you'll have something to fall back on if it doesn't work out. So I'm like, okay, cool. So, he was like 100% on board and has been completely supportive ever since.
Even the school board was supportive of you. Am I correct?
Yeah, the school. Because I talked to my professors and the dean of the department, who used to be one of my professors. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, at the time I was like the model teacher at my university. I graduated with, the highest honors, all that good stuff. And, they wanted me to be the president of the Teachers Honor Society. So I was like that ideal teacher. And they're like, yeah, but they had noticed my state that past year or so after my mom had died, and they could see that there was a lot going on with me, and they had also seen me in a lot of shows on campus too. And they're like, they're like, well, yeah, it would be a loss to the teaching world if you decided not to do this, but we can see that you have gifts in this other area, and we can see that this would actually make you happy. So you need to do what makes you happy.
And you would wind up moving to New York City, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. How was that for you at first? I mean, I'm from, like I said, we've been to New York a bunch of times. I was born right outside of there. But how was that experience for coming from Huntsville to New York?
Whew, that was quite a change. I mean, that was a scary experience too, because I was leaving my comfort zone. I was a big fish in a small pond in the local community there in Huntsville. I was very well known especially in the theater world there, and I had to give all that up, all that comfort, and all my friends and family to come up here to one of the biggest cities in the world and one of the toughest cities in the world to make it too. It's just a very tough place. It's just like you have to grow a thick skin here in the city, because you're no longer a big fish in a small pond. You're a very small fish in a very large ocean of talent, and you face rejection on a daily basis here. And I was like, yeah, okay. I gotta, if this is what I want to do, I just got to fully commit and just not give up and be persistent. So I was, it took me 13 years to get where I was, until like when I first moved there to when I got cast in Terrifier, basically, or actually when Terrifier first came out and became a success. So, I mean, that was, 13 years of waiting tables and doing various acting jobs off Broadway, then some, which led to voiceover jobs, which led to, Broadway tours.
You did video games, right? You did. There was a couple of video games voices you did. Is that?
Yeah, I did some video games, especially when I was a non-union actor. I did a lot more voiceover work when I was non-union, because most of the union work is out in LA. But I did like Two Worlds 2. I did this game called Invisimals for PlayStation, and probably one of the most panned games ever released, Ride to Hell Retribution. I still have a copy of that game, because I keep that there to keep me humble, so I remember where I started. Because it's like that game could have been so much better. It was something. It's like, the way they talked this thing up, it was going to be like Sons of Anarchy meets Grand Theft Auto, and I had recorded it, and like 2 years later they finally released it. And basically, when I played the game, I'm like, where's all the stuff I recorded, and why are they using our practice takes?
Oh,
It's like they
nice.
had they cut out a lot of the dialogue that made sense for the game, and they just used the first takes that we were doing, where we're just basically reading over the script ourselves. And I'm like,
Wow.
they just rushed that all out because they just had to release this game due to contractual reasons. And it's just, you could tell it was just slapdash together. I'm a completionist when I play games, and I don't usually give up on a game, but I gave up halfway through the game because I was like, this is garbage. It's just like, bugs and glitches everywhere. It was just bad. It was just very bad. But like, I'm in the game. I play like the first main boss in the game, main anvil. I'm like this big giant biker. It doesn't sound like me at all. So that's what I love about voiceover work, because I can play characters I could never play in live, in like actual in as myself, because of it's like I could never play a 6 foot five mountain of a man. It's like no one would look at me and go, oh yeah, he's a biker.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
you also toured with, so you did what, 5 years with the Grinch Stole Christmas, which was your
yeah,
understudy to Stephen Carl
yeah, my
from
buddy
Lazy
Stefan.
Town. What kind of experience? Which obviously, I think that definitely we'll get to the mean one
Yeah,
eventually, but I know that had to be had to help a little bit with that role
Prelude.
eventually. But
yeah,
yeah,
that was quite a fun five, Christmases. Like, because I would do that every holiday season for 5 years, and it was great because I was his understudy, and I also played Grandpa Who as well eventually in the show, and it was so much fun. Like Stefan, my God, that man was talented. He was actually trained in clowning and mime work and all that, so he was like a master at physical comedy. He was, I call him my Socrates of physical comedy. He was just amazing because and as an actor, I had never, because I never went to school for acting. I just learned from watching my betters and just picking up what they were doing, and so I had never had an actor that could actually take me aside and fine tune my skills in that realm of physical acting and physical comedy. And he was able to do that, and it was like a master's class in it. All, it was wonderful. And I've applied so much of like what I learned from him to Art the Clown. I'm like, because like when I first got cast as Art, I called Stefan up, and I'm like, buddy, I'm playing this silent Mr. Bean like character, but he's an evil bastard, and I just want some tips and stuff like that, because like Steph and I shared a huge love for Rowan Atkinson as Mr. Bean, and like other great physical comedians like the Marx Brothers and stuff like that. So he taught me a lot there. Gave me some great advice, and you can probably even look at like my mannerisms as Art in some scenes and see a lot of Stefan in that. You can see a lot of Robbie Rotten, especially in what he does. So it's like I always say, to other actors, learn from your betters and adapt and make it your own. Because there's this is like one of those weird careers where you can actually plagiarize in a way other people's works.
yeah, you were also with the art we mentioned. We're going to Art the Clown, obviously, which
Hmm.
I mean, we all. So, were you? How familiar were you with Hollow's Eve, with Mike Gianelli's work prior?
Yeah, I was actually familiar with it. I had seen it. I can't remember exactly how I saw it, but I had seen it. I think probably like on YouTube or something like that. I watched the whole entire movie on YouTube or something like that. And it was before I even knew about the auditions for Terrifier. I was like, that's a cool character. I'm like, that's. I remember thinking to myself then, that character's like a evil Mr. Bean. And it's like there's a lot of potential to be had with that character. I would love to have a chance to play a character like that one day. I think there was something I could do with it. But I never imagined when I first watched it that I would actually be playing him one day.
Now, on the audition, I saw the audition tape obviously a while ago, and so you had a Joker shirt on. So I know you're a big
Yeah.
Joker fan. When I think of the Joker,
Yes.
I think of like, I mean, when I was a kid, they were running the actual sitcom with Cesar Romero, and then you had
Hmm.
who was you had Mark Hamill, Jack Nicholson, a lot of people who
Yeah.
stepped into that role one way or the other. Who was your favorite Joker? And when you wore that shirt, was that kind of like a little bit of like, part of the, like a little inspiration? You had to like kind of deck yourself out a little bit in it.
A little bit, yeah. It's also usually when I go into an audition, I like to kind of dress a little bit like the character, but not totally as the character. And I was like, well, Joker's a killer clown. Art's a killer clown. Gonna do a little, suggestive, stuff here. Trying to like, hey, think of me as this killer clown. That's why I wear that shirt. But yeah, I mean, Joker's my favorite villain of all time too. So I mean, I would say like my favorites. I'm like live action wise, I would say it's Cesar Romero because he was the closest to the actual comic book version at that time, and I mean, he was just absolutely fantastic. He would totally let himself go as a character. He was just amazing in that. But also, I would say my favorite Joker of all time is Mark Hamill's version. He is like when I first watched the Batman the animated series. When I first heard his voice, I was like, that is exactly the voice I always had in my head when I was reading the comic books. And I was like, that's my Joker. That is Joker right there for me. So, like, to me, hearing of Joker not with some kind of Hamilist like quality to him is like hearing Bugs Bunny without the Brooklyn accent. It just doesn't work for me. And I'm like, so my version of the Joker is kind of like a combination of Cesar Romero and Mark Hamill's version.
And you actually did some Joker work. You did what, Nightwing Escalations, which
Mhm.
was that? What? Yes, you did that for how many years was that? Was that just a year?
That was just a season, but we actually never even finished it because it was a fan made project. So it's in the third season. That's when they really brought Joker into it. And God, I actually got cast as Joker and Art in the same exact week,
Oh, wow.
which was really cool.
Oh.
So I was like, wow, this is a great serendipitous week for me. So
When you did the audition, you said, so I had read, I think that you had kind of knew you got the role like 99% because you were kind of getting figured out for makeup eventually. Was that in fact?
yeah,
Or-
for Art, yeah. It's like they asked me right there in the rooms, like, hey, how do you feel about wearing a lot of makeup? I'm like, oh, I'm totally used to that. Doing all my children's theater. I played a lot of animals and crazy characters like that, so I'm used to a lot of makeup and prosthetics put on my face. So I was like, oh, that's no problem. So they asked me right there in the room to come in for a makeup test. But it wasn't until like a few months after I actually went into the makeup test, and that's when I actually found out I actually did have the part. My agent at the time just never told me.
oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it's one of the reasons I don't have that agent anymore. So
What a bad joke, huh?
yeah, no kidding. They
Exactly.
must be kicking themselves in the butt now, but
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and I was going to bring that up eventually, but I'll just mention it really fast now. I mean, I'm sure when you first got the role, no one had any idea like how
No.
huge this was going to be. It is, it's insane. I
Oh,
mean, we'll
no,
get to that.
no.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I didn't even think of that when I was going in to audition for it because I had never done film work before. I wanted a chance to get into doing film work, so I was like, I saw that audition, so like, this would be perfect for that. I don't know if this is a low budget independent film. I don't know if anybody will even see this thing, but I'm like, hey, at least this gives me some good experience being on a set, so I can learn the in and outs of all that. I can learn the lingo, all that fun stuff. And I can use this maybe for a reel one day, and that might help me get actual legit work one day. I had no idea what was going to become.
Well, and I think what's crazy is so you always based your characters off the way an individual would speak, right? So all of a sudden
Right.
you get this role for Art the Clown, there is no there is no speech, I should say.
Right.
And I know you're influenced by Buster Keaton, Chaplin. I mean, there was so many of those comedian guys that you added to the character. Even John Ritter. I see some of this like the
Oh,
fall
yeah.
down.
Oh, John Ritter
But-
was amazing.
Yeah, amazing, right? I know way too early of a loss with that guy. I mean, when I was a kid, Three's Company was on like 4 times a day, and
Yeah, man.
it was a great show.
Oh God, especially when Don Knotts was on there. Don Knotts was
he was
another one.
awesome,
Like,
wasn't he?
Mister Ripper, Mister Tripper. I mean, it's like you're not one of those, aren't you?
I used to love that show. And obviously, Mr. Bean, I know, was a big thing
Yeah.
with And what I think it's awesome, like, so Ed, when David would do characters, you would actually study animals, right? Like, and Art the
Yeah.
Clown is off a vulture. Is this
Yes. I base him in. The funny thing is, I had played a vulture before in college in a production of the Jungle Book that I did. And what we did, we went to the zoo to research our characters. And I was very lucky to have probably the most active animal that day. And the zookeeper there let me do whatever I could to rile him up. So I got to really, have some fun with that vulture. I had him like, threatening me and all kinds of stuff. So I got to see a lot of his mannerisms. So it was like I just kind of dug back into like what I remember from playing Chill the Vulture in Jungle Book. I was like, yeah, it's because Art kind of looks like a vulture, especially that nose. And so I gave him that little hunched over look, especially he kind of changes his posture because that's what predators do when they're on the hunt. Everything's led by the eyes and the head. They're and so that's where I just started from and just kind of built them off there. And I was like, also like just wanted to bring more of the clowning aspects to the character as well. So I just dug into my love of those, great silent comedian and physical comedian characters from film and television.
Yeah, I thought that was, and like a lot of actors, what they study serial killers before they go into these
Mm-hmm.
roles, and I thought it was really cool that you had based your characters on the animals because like you said, right when I heard
Yeah.
the vulture thing, and I'm looking at Art the Clown, I'm like, oh, I could see it 100%.
Oh yeah.
Like you said, just the way he walks and carries himself, Um, but the first scene you shot was that your first, was the scene with Tara in the garage, right, with Jenna? Was
Yes.
that your first violent scene that you actually shot also?
That was my first violent scene I ever made. I
Gotcha.
was so very much, worried about hurting her because I had never really done real stunt work like that before. And Jenna is a pro at that kind of stuff. She's a stunt actress as well.
I was
And
going to
so
ask you,
she's
she
like,
does all her own stunts, right?
yeah, pretty much. She did all of her own stunts in the film. But yeah, and I was like, there's that one moment that I call it my Plan 9 from outer space moment, where I hate watching this one moment in the movie because I it's a big mess up, and it's where I'm choking her, and it's you can see my hands around her throat, but you can tell I'm not squeezing. There's space between my hands and her throat, and that's because at that point I thought we were doing a close up of her face, and so I was just putting my hands there for like just something. I wasn't really wanting to actually squeeze her throat in that moment. But we had done actual other close ups, but they weren't usable, so Damien had to use that one take. And I was like, "Oh, son of a bitch!" It's like that. It looks like I'm force choking her. So I was like, "Dang it, dang it, dang it!" But yeah, I was like, I had to get used to actually being aggressive, especially with women, because I'm a teddy bear. I'm very averse to violence towards women, especially. It's like because my sister was in an abusive marriage and stuff like that, and so I am very, very hesitant about hurting people, especially women. So I was just like, geez. But Jen is like, no, go ahead and like choke me, push your thumbs into my eyeballs. It gives me something to work with. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah. I mean, it gives me, I have something to play off of. If it's too much, I'll let you know. I'm like, okay. But I'm still like that after every take. I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah, and so and what a scene that well, I don't know, I just think is just amazing. And actually, anytime because there's been plenty of times I've hung out with some friends, be like, hey man, you gotta check out this movie, and they're like, what movie's this? And Ed's one of these guys. Back in the day, I would show them this scene, and the pizzeria scene, which was shot in Deer Park, New York, at Andy Deer's Hill's Pizzeria, which actually closed down in
Yeah.
2017. That scene where you first interact with Dawn and Tara is, I gotta say, it's brilliant, man. Like, did you come
Yeah.
up with a lot of that on the spot, like because just your mannerisms in that and
Oh
with
my
the ring and
God.
stuff is just, I mean, it's a great scene
Thank you.
there's not even any violence in that scene, but it's just a table setter. I think it just sets the whole tone
Yeah.
for the character. You really get to meet, or I think out of even going back, that is when you really meet Art the Clown, I believe.
Yeah. I agree. That's why I love that scene. That's like that's one of those scenes where it showcases everything about the character. You don't need exposition about this guy. You know everything you need to know about that guy from that one scene. It's just you see his serious side, you see his really creepy side, you see his sinister side, you see his playful side. It's just there's so many aspects of the character in that scene, but a lot of that, it was a lot of give and take between Damien and I. There was a lot of playing around. Yeah, because he knew exactly what he wanted me to do in that scene, but he also gave me a lot of freedom. Like, I think that's when Damien first realizes like art is actually a clown. It's like when I like hop up and walk away into the bathroom. I just didn't just walk. I had this
Little strut.
goofy little gait about myself when I was walking away. And he's like, wow, I didn't really think about it, but that kind of works. He is a clown, so let's keep doing that. And so, but like the whole thing with me making all the faces, that was a lot of
Oh my
fun
god,
because
that was some
he
of the
just,
that was some of the
oh,
creepiest shit
oh
I've
yeah,
ever
that
seen.
was that
I
was
mean,
fun.
honestly,
He just let the camera roll for about 5 minutes and said, just make faces. And so I was just making all these faces at Jenna, and I'm just going at it, and I just keep going and going and going and going, and because they never said cut, so I just kept going, and they're like, "Oh God, cut, 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 cut." Okay, okay. I'm like, "Oh, it's something wrong." I was like, "No, no, no, we got plenty." It's like we were just watching what we were doing. We got lost and forgot to say cut. It was like, so I gave them tons of options. I was just playing around, and I think from that moment on, I think Damien and I, that night really solidified where we were going to be taking the character a lot for the rest of the ride, because we discovered that we can do a lot of playing around with him, especially if it's the scenes that aren't the kill scenes, and so we can add more personality to him that what had been before in, like, All Hallows Eve and stuff like that.
And you and David, it seems like you guys had like a really, I don't know if I've heard of a director and an actor having such a, you guys like switch back ideas, right? You guys, was it that right from right when you got hired? Was there just a communication? It was like, I picture you being out, being like, oh, say you're at a mall and someone pisses you off. You're like, I would like to kill this person this way. And then you bring it back to Damien and be like, I have an idea for this scene,
Oh
maybe.
yeah,
Is this
I've
how the
done that. I've
relationship
done that.
works?
I've done that several times. I come up with kill ideas, and most of the time he's like, "No, we won't use that." But that's a fun idea. It might inspire something else. So I'm like, "Cool." He's very open to ideas. It's not just with me. He's like that with the rest of the cast and the crew. It's just a very collaborative effort on this. Is because I've worked with so many directors where they're all about it has to be their idea, no one else. It can't be the actor's idea. It has to be their idea. And sometimes you have to find creative ways to get around that to make them think it's their idea. But with Damien, he's totally open to other people's ideas. He has his own ideas, and he'll want to do his own ideas. But then sometimes he's like, anybody else got an idea? And so we'll play around. And so he's very open to that,
That's
which is
awesome.
great. He's a very actor-friendly director. I mean, I know, like, Lauren especially had a lot of interactions with him when she was creating Sienna for herself. She was, going
She
to
was
him for
amazing.
like playlists, all that kind of stuff. She really went deep in with like the character development with her, and she was just constantly interacting with Damien during that whole entire thing.
You can kind of see that with him, and like I said, with that pizza parlor scene, I think that's really when you get to know who you get a glimpse into this character with Art.
Yeah.
Then obviously you kill Stephen Ramon, and then the scene where I've read this and I don't know if this was true or not, but when Dawn and Tara are in the car, I think there's an emergency vehicle that passes by. Was just like this wasn't actually planned, right? This just
No.
actually happened. It just passed by.
That actually happened. This ambulance just drove by, and it was just like, oh, that's perfect. It's like, this is, and like Catherine just kind of reacted to it, and it was like, this is perfect.
I was wondering that when she turned around, that was just the way it just happened magically, right?
Yeah, it was just one of those great moments we just
Natural.
caught there in the moment. Yeah, it was just like, this is great. We got to use that. And I think we did some extra takes just in case, where we tried to simulate that with lights, but I think they actually used the real version where the actual ambulance went by.
That's crazy. And then obviously, obviously we'll talk about the other scene too, but there's a scene of, the scene that everyone, I think first, I'm sure it's like what do they call it? Cooler talk, when everyone's like, hey man, I saw this movie and you got to see this scene. And every time I've heard, even on Howard Stern, when they talk about this movie, the first Terrifier, it becomes the Dawn scene.
Oh yeah.
And so, first of all, this was shot in two locations, right? Trenton, New Jersey, and Staten Island at the Seaville Mental Hospital.
Yeah. Seaview Mental Hospital. Yeah, it's just it's like I mean, I think it's still used today, like as a retirement or like a nursing home or something like that. But it was originally an old mental asylum.
I think it
Like
got damaged by the hurricane, right? When you guys were filming,
yeah. Oh, before we yeah, it was damaged by the hurricane back in 2012.
and you
So
guys
yeah.
filmed in January that scene, so the weather must have been absolutely brutal.
It was horrible. It's like 20 degrees that night when we were filming with Catherine. So I mean, I knew I was cold, so I knew she was extremely cold because she's naked and covered in blood. Well, fake blood, not real blood, but still, I mean, good God.
And you
And
guys
she's
had to
doing that for
flip her.
hours.
You guys had to change her around like every 30 to 40 seconds, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
just you can't hang that long upside down.
Yeah, we can only film for 30 seconds at a time, so it was extremely stressful. That was like the one night on set where there was no joking around. Everything was very serious that night because we're all worried about, her safety.
Wow, yeah, and
Yeah,
that so
that scene pissed me off because I had never seen Terrifier 1 because I couldn't find it. And Tony said, it's on YouTube. So me and my son, who, by the way, is like, when he found out you were coming on, this kid is, I mean, he's your biggest fan. If I don't say that, I'm going to get my
awesome.
shit kicked out of me. But so we're watching it yesterday on YouTube last night, and he's like, a couple scenes go by, the pizzeria scene, and then another scene. He goes, wait a minute, what the fuck? And I'm like, what? Because he's 21, and he goes,
Yeah.
this is neutered, bro. This is neutered. This is the censored version. You're
I've
missing
never seen the
everything.
YouTube one, so I didn't know that they butchered it up, but they took shit out.
They cut out all the gruesome stuff.
Wow.
And, so we had to put it on Tubi, which had commercials. Then we had to go back and rewatch it, and then I'm like, holy fuck. But I see why they cut out everything. Like,
wow.
everything. Except for, like, where you're starting the hacksaw, and you look back from there, and then just a couple times your face, they showed none of it. So I would, if you don't know and you're watching that movie on YouTube, don't watch it on YouTube because you're not going to see.
People get like, "Why is everybody talking about this?" I was like, "Oh."
So yeah, that was
yeah.
That scene when we went back and literally put it on Tubi. I was like, I didn't know what to say for a couple minutes.
I can understand. It's. I mean, I didn't know what to say either when I first read it because I thought that what he described there on the page was just for our benefit because I'm so used to how movies are where they cut away from all that kind of stuff. And he's like, "Oh no, we're going to show all of that happen." I'm like, "That's fantastic. Let's do it."
And you guys got delayed a couple of days, so you guys were using pig intestines as the,
we used pig intestine or like pig casings stuffed with fat. And we got delayed because like the first night we were filming, it had flooded in the room, so it was unsafe to film in there, with all the electrical equipment. So we postponed it by like a week or so, and so our DP had taken the pig intestines back to his house, but he didn't put them in his refrigerator because he's like, "Oh yeah, it's winter; it'll be fine here in the garage." So he left them in the garage. So we opened them that night when we got back on set, and we're like, "Oh God." The smell that came from those things. It's good that we weren't running sound that night because you would just heard everybody gagging the whole entire time. And because at one point I accidentally cut into one of the pig intestines, so all that stuff just started spilling out. And it was just like that's when the smell really hit. And I was like, oh God.
Yeah, see, well, and that's the thing is like I love the movie. Like you got the practical effects are just amazing. That's one thing I love about the films. I'm sure, like I know Tom Savini's a big influence, obviously,
yes,
for a lot of people. I mean, with his illusion books and all. I mean, guy's just amazing. Everything he's done. But what was it like when Damien would bring some of these props in? Was it just like I could just picture like buckets and just tons of shit? It must have been kind of like Christmas, like, oh, I'm going to play with this. I'm going to use this.
Oh yeah. Oh, very much so. Very much so. It's like, cause that's my first time seeing how all this stuff was done too. So it's like, this is, and he does the old school method of just the, tubes with where he just puts the blood in there and he either uses a plunger or sometimes you just have to blow into the tube itself. So it's like it's the old school method, every which way. It's like
Well, I remember the extras with Tara. He was
Yeah.
blowing the when she got the injury on the leg. He was like blowing the blood out of the
Yeah.
leg and stuff.
Yeah, it's total old school stuff. We did that for both films. It's just like this. It's insane. It's just like absolutely insane. It's like
I truly
especially
believe that's what makes those films as epic as they are. Is it's not CGI. Because that's what I think ruins a lot of movies.
Yeah, he's used CGI in these films, but he only uses it when he absolutely has to. He's not going to use it if he can actually do it with practical effects.
Speaking of almost has to, didn't he have to do that for? Can you tell us about the cocksock?
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of having to use this effect.
Yeah.
Which after I knew about this scene, after I've heard about this, and I went back and watched it, I swear there was like a second where I told my wife, I was like, yeah, I think I could almost get a glimpse, I think.
Yeah. Because it's the Buffalo Bill scene, as I call it, where I'm wearing my victim's scalp in her tatas. But I'm not. Most people don't realize I'm not just wearing her tatas and scalp. I'm also wearing her meow meow down there too. Yep. So
yeah, I caught that.
Yeah, and I had to, they had a whole prosthetic they made that I had to glue to myself. And, that morning, Damien calls me up. It's like, Dave, you have a cock sock you can bring to set with you. I'm like, a what? Like a condom? He's like, no. Just bring a sock to cover your junk up with. I'm like, okay. And I didn't think, so I brought a bright white tube sock to put over myself. And so I had to get myself into this thing by myself because everybody's like, we're absolutely not putting you into that stuff. I am not. Damon's like, I am not gluing that piece to you. You're going to have to do that yourself. So I had to glue that thing to myself, and I walk out, and I'm like, I'm sorry guys, but it's not totally covering me up. It's like, and you just see this bright white tube socks poking out through all sides of the prosthetic, and I'm like, I am so sorry. It's just like, hey, ladies, hello, but it's like, that's great. I can't, Finkel Einhorn this. So he's like, oh no, Dave, why did you bring the bright sock? Oh no. It's like, you should have brought a black one. I'm like, you racist. How was I supposed to know that? And so that's like one of the few areas of the movie where they use some CG because they had to digitally edit out the white tube sock that you would see poking out.
Surprised they didn't just spray paint it or something.
Yeah, I know. I think they were just like, oh, well, we'll just fix it in post. We don't have time.
What was your favorite kill scene in one before we get to two? It was like, I know that you were a fan of the exterminator getting his head split like a pen.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool one. I mean, of course, the hacksaw scene's really cool and stuff like that, but I thought that was just a really cool decapitation. And I love that idea of like just pulling his head back like a Pez dispenser, then ripping it off and kicking it like a soccer ball. That was just fun.
Yeah, because it kind of showed that, like, when you're watching Art watch the TV in the beginning, it kicks the TV. There was just sometimes you just felt like the character was just disgusted. He would toss a head or, like, just his, like, back to the character thing again. But, so Terrifier 1 comes out. You guys, what was it? I think Damien made that for like $35,000, which is insane.
Yes, $35,000, which is. I mean, when he told me that amount, I was laughing for about 5 minutes straight because I could not believe we made the movie on that kind of budget. It's like he told me this after we released the movie, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I thought it was like we made it for like $500,000.
It's insane when you think about it.
Insane. That's like that's a little bit more than a year's salary of me waiting tables. So I was like, that's.
You're still waiting tables at this time, right? So you're waiting tables. You're in this movie, and then you find out about, which I'm very curious about this. So you find out about conventions, right? So as a convention goer, I've been to several.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking like, and you don't have to tell me obviously, but I have to ask. I'm like, me and my wife are always like, man, these guys, they must school here. I mean, because. I know Art the Clown. It was when we went to the convention. First of all, everybody's dressed like Art the Clown. I'd never seen it. Besides like Freddy and Jason, which was like the norm. Like this was taken over. You just saw it. I mean, how long was it before like? First of all, it's funny because a lot of musicians we talk to, me and Ed interview a lot of bands and stuff. Also, we've all done the restaurant. I've worked in restaurants my whole life. And I always say one thing:
13 years.
Everyone should have to fucking work at a restaurant because you realize what assholes people are. how
Yeah,
rude they are, and I think it would just change everyone's attitude because I know
it
there's
does.
nothing a bigger turn off to me than someone who's rude to a waiter or waitress. So how explain like you're
Oh,
doing
I've
this
broken up
movie?
with girls. I yeah. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
broken up with girls over how they treated the wait staff. I was just like, nope, I can't date someone like that. I hate it when someone's a problem at the table when I'm eating out because I get stressed out because I'm like, I know how the waiter is feeling themselves, and I'm like, oh God, please, oh, I'm so sorry, I am so sorry.
it's
So it's like if
embarrassing. Yeah,
yeah, if I'm dating someone and they're just being that way towards a waiter, I'm like, absolutely not. It's just I can't go through more dates like this or live a life with someone like that that's going to treat people like garbage just because they're doing their job, especially when it's things that they can't necessarily control, like
the kitchen.
the kitchen makes a mistake or something. And people make honest mistakes, so it's just like, come on, come on.
Or it's busy. It's
Yeah. Oh God.
busy.
My worst shift I ever had was Valentine's Day 2018. It was I was the only waiter on staff that night on Valentine's Day because
Oh
my
my God,
manager
And
was a
holidays
total
are the
idiot.
worst. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
Holidays are like the
the
worst.
busiest. Yeah, especially Valentine's Day is one of the busiest restaurant days of the year.
in
And
New
my
York.
manager's like, "Oh no, you'll be fine." Yeah, especially in New York. I had the whole entire restaurant to myself. I had a brand new busboy that didn't really know what he was doing, and a bartender that was extremely incompetent, and the manager there just didn't want to help out. So it was just me, and I at 7 o'clock on the dot. I had 21 tables come in at the same time, all wanting bottle service too,
Oh my
Oh my
god.
and
God.
that was just a freaking nightmare. I literally went at one point, walked into the kitchen, walked into the freezer, and just started laughing hysterically, and then just walked right back out and back onto the floor because I was losing my mind. And then I had
This
jury duty the next morning too, so I was like, good God, this is pure hell.
it's
That's
funny you say that because I've
another
been in
movie.
there. Yeah,
Another
I've been
movie.
there where I've walked into that walk-in cooler and just screamed "fuck," just because you just don't know what to do anymore because it's just so overwhelming. You're covered in food. There's shit
Yeah,
everywhere. It's just a fucking circus.
everybody's
But
screaming they want more free bread and water, and I'm
yeah,
like, do you not see I have all these tables by myself, all ordering at the same? I'm like, good God, people.
people are lined up at the door, like looking at their
Mm.
watches. That's just yeah.
Yeah.
So for how nice was it to like when you started doing conventions? Were you just like, holy shit, I can get out of this because you have to be
Oh, that
banking
was
at these
wonderful. Oh,
things.
that's the thing. I had just gotten fired from that job 2 weeks before my first convention over another similar incident where it was the manager was not helping me out when it was another waiter night. It was almost a similar situation where we just got hit by people. We had no air conditioning in the restaurant that night, and so it was like 90 something degrees in there, and
Oh.
I got like, oh gosh, octuples sat at the same time, and my manager was like, "Hey, there's these really two hot girls sitting at this one table that just got there." And he's like, "I'm like rounding up a bunch of drinks for 5 different tables at the bar." He's like, "Go take their order." I'm like, "They just sat." He's like, "No, but go take their order now." And I'm like, "Dude, I've got like 5 other tables I got to take care of first before I can get to them. I'm weeded right now, big time, you know." It's like, I'll get to them second. I already told them I'll be with them in a second. He's like, "But I want you to take them now. I'm the manager. I'm telling you to do this right now." I'm like, "Okay, dude." It's like, either you can help me or shut up and let me do my job. Because
Or do it yourself.
I'm like overheated, overstressed. I'm just like, I don't give a fuck at this point. He's like, "What did you say?" And I'm like, I'll say it again slower for you. Either you help me or you shut up and let me do my job." He's like, "Go home." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to go home and leave this other guy by himself with all these tables. You can chew me out and punish me at the end of the shift, but let me just get through this right now, and we'll talk about this later." And I walked away, and I ended up taking that table's order, and I come back and putting that order in. He's like, "So when are you leaving?" I'm like, "I'm not leaving." And he's like, "Then I'm the manager, so I can fire you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, have fun." It was great because it was one of those moments like, dude, everybody here hates you. I just totally called him out right there in front of the whole entire restaurant because because it was like right there on the floor, right in front of everybody. So, and I have tables all like, waiter, 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 I need you, I need you. I'm like, sorry, I no longer work here. Best of luck getting your food now.
And anybody that worked in a restaurant who hears this is probably like, "Hey man,
Yeah.
oh no!" I mean, it's the manager
Well,
is usually like the hall
Yeah.
monitor or the
well, that
security
guy,
guard at the.
Oh,
that's
it
the guy
felt
that
great.
needs the hammer to the head, like the pesticide guy. That's the
Yeah.
guy who
Oh,
needs a hammer right to
it
the
felt
skull.
great. I just I told him to fuck off right there in front of everybody. It's like, I basically lived everybody's dream of just telling off their boss and walking
Sweet.
out. And then it was after my first con, I went in there to pick up my last paycheck. And the GM was there, and he pulls me aside. He's like, David, I just want to first apologize to you for what happened. I don't feel that was fair what happened, because I talked to the rest of the employees and found out what actually happened, and he shouldn't have fired you. He It's like, if you want your job, you can have your job back, and I actually fired that manager, so you're free to have your job back if you want. I'm like, oh no, I'm good.
What you need to do is, how you go see celebrities put up the pictures in the restaurants. You should give them the one where you got the given the bird from the first movie.
Yeah.
That's the one you should send them. But
Oh
so yeah,
God.
so the
That guy
conventions
was
must have
such a
changed
piece of crap.
everything.
Oh, it really did. It's like, that was my I did my first convention. I was like, oh God, I don't have to wait tables anymore. This is wonderful. If I can just keep doing conventions. And that was, Terrifier, one that, I was making the bare minimum. I was basically just making less of what my guarantee is now for a convention.
Was it overwhelming? Was it like you kind of had the idea how big this character was getting though when you started? Like it must have been kind of like, holy shit! Like until you get out there, it's probably.
Yeah, especially after we released on Netflix, I saw a bigger increase of fans, especially at the conventions, because we had gone to a wider audience. Because before that, at my first few conventions, it was just kind of underground, hits that a few people knew about, but Netflix opened the floodgates on it. So, but yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. I do keep everything in perspective for myself. I look at like my guarantee what I make at a convention is more than twice what I would make waiting tables for a month. So I was like, that just keeps me like, oh, this is great. So I was like, I'm very grateful for that. So I'm like, oh, whatever I make. It's still going to be better than waiting tables.
So can I ask you, because I've always wondered this, now we'll get on to part two, but like and like I said, I've been to a lot of conventions, and I've always, so you guys get a guarantee for the convention. But
Yes.
you guys also, like, I'm thinking, like, when I watched Robert Englund at this convention, I saw him at Spooky Empire like 2 years ago, and people were in line for like 15 hours.
Yeah.
Are you guys getting, or is the celebrity getting all that? Like, say it's $20, $50, whatever for the signature. Is that going to? Do you guys get all that, or does it have to go to some agent?
Pretty much.
Rent?
Yeah. I mean, like my manager gets a 10% cut, and like the photo ops, the photography company doing the photo ops gets a cut and stuff like that too. Damien gets a cut of my photo ops as well, since he does. We split the our share 50-50, because he does all the makeup and everything like that. So but yeah, for the most part, we pretty much take home good like 85%, 90 up to 90% of the gross, which is great. The IRS loves me at the end of the year, though.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, I've always wondered that. And I never asked anybody.
Amazing. But it's a little bit different outside the U.S. though. Like in the European markets, those conventions sometimes take 50% of what you make.
They're brutal.
Which sucks, because they're also getting a commission off the door, so those people are really banking. And then sometimes they also take something for like the taxes too out there. So and sometimes they don't give you the tax forms too, so you're basically having to pay a double tax, which is great. So it's like it's like the European conventions aren't as good as the American conventions for that very reason. But other than that, it's great. I don't complain.
I could imagine. I had to ask. I was like, I don't know if that's like personal information, but I'm like, man, I've always wondered. I'm like, when I'm watching England and those guys are Bruce Campbell, I'm like, these guys got to be banking.
Man, if I can, if I could have the longevity that Robert and Kane and all those guys have had for like 30, 40 years doing these conventions, if I could have that same kind of longevity, I will be a happy boy. Well, it's
I have a feeling you will, man.
Now, yeah. I'm hoping, knock on wood.
Yeah, I have a total feeling you will, and that. So we're gonna talk about part two now.
Mhm.
So the Indiegogo campaign, which I took part of. It was a you guys, was it amazing the reaction you had from the fans for that film?
Holy,
Because I mean, I had never
that
seen
was
anything like it.
insane. That was absolutely insane because, like, I remember, like, Damien and I were, trying to figure out what price we should probably, set for our goal on there. And I think said like something like 100,000. He's like, oh no, there's no way we're gonna make that. He's like, well, let's do 50. We'll be lucky if we can make 50,000. So let's just set our goal for 50,000. And we made our goal in less than an hour. And it was just like, holy crap. We were
It's
like,
insane.
we did not, I mean, we got up to, I think, like about 250,000 on there, which was absolutely insane. And that's only because we closed off the campaign at the end. And we didn't leave it open. I think if we had left it open, we could have probably made double that, because I had
And you
so many
guys,
people message me wanting to contribute, and they just couldn't because we had closed it.
yeah, a lot of the stuff sold out fast. I know you guys had some
Yeah.
extras in the movie, right? That were also contributors. What scene was
Yeah.
it? The actual Clown Cafe shooting
The
scene that
Clown
they were in?
Cafe, yeah. We also like Tommy, the guy that I get with the broom at the beginning of the movie,
Okay,
or the mop. I mean, he
in the
gets the mop for the head.
laundromat.
Yeah. So we had some Indiegogo backers that got special kills in there and stuff like that, which is really cool. But
That's
that,
awesome.
the Clown Cafe that was the big scene that we brought a lot of the backers into, and I think that was one of the most fun weeks we ever had on set too, which we all thought was going to be the most stressful week on set because there's so many moving parts of that scene, so many stunts and all that, and so many things that could have gone wrong, and nothing did. It's the week before COVID happened, so like we had no idea the world was about to go fucking insane the next week because we were up in nowhere, upstate New York, Amish country. And so we were away from all the craziness that was already going on. We were just hearing, "Oh yeah, Tom Hanks just got COVID." We're like, "What?"
He was the first one, right? Yeah. Then it was all
Yeah,
down. It was all
yeah,
downhill from
yeah.
there.
It was crazy, but like we were having a blast. And I think having the fans on set added a new, you know, bout of
Dynamic.
energy to dynamic. Yeah, because like we had already been filming for a few months before that, and so we had some new blood in there, so it just made it more exciting for us. It was a fun week. We would shoot and then go and hang out all night and drink and party and stuff like that, and go beat it back the next day to film more. And we were just having fun. It's like we were partying right before the world ended. It was crazy.
Well, and that actually, the pandemic actually kind of benefited the movie, right? Because,
Yeah.
you can explain, but it was actually some benefit to it with some of the scenes because you guys had more time
Yes.
to build them.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing, because we still had not filmed the alley kill or the corners kill, and some other scenes as well. So like, and Damien, the reason the filming schedule was taking so long is like Damien was making all the prosthetics himself. We had a team that was supposed to help us at the very beginning that bailed us on us like a few weeks before we started filming. So Damien just had to take on making the costume, like Sienna's costume and the prosthetics himself, and like our costumer Olga and Phil, our producer. They just buckled down and started making everything themselves. And so we would sometimes have to film for a week and then would have to take a week off so Damien could build stuff for the next week's shoot. And so we had started filming Allie's kill right before the pandemic, and it was just like the very beginnings of the kill, and pandemic happened, and Damien was going back. And he wasn't really happy with the footage we already felt. He's like, "This is just not going to beat the hacksaw scene," and so he revamped the whole entire scene. And he's like, "I got all this time now to build everything, so I'm going to take advantage of that time stuff sitting here moping around for months on end." And so that's what he did. He went back, revamped that kill, and he revamped the corners kill, and he had all that time to build everything. And so he went nuts with it, and I think it was a boon to us in the long run.
And the corner kill scene, that was actually something you're not a fan of, like eyeballs and shit. So that was actually something,
Yeah.
right? That was a little bit,
Oh,
a little bit of a,
I think it's hysterical though with him putting the eye in, and he goes like, "Ah."
yeah,
That
that was
cracks me
great.
up every time I see it. I love that part right there. I was like, "This
Well,
is
that's
so
the thing
messed
with
up."
that, with the films, and you know, there's the comedic thing kind of loosens up the film a little bit, like because you have this
Yeah.
brutal. If you actually sit back and watch, like it's a pretty it's hard to say a feel good movie, but it's a pretty fucking brutal movie that kind of has a feel good edge to it a little bit, which actually I
Yeah.
think adds to it so much and gives that whole. You could totally see the Nightmare on Elm Street thing going on. It has that
Mhm.
'80s feel, which is obviously some of the best slasher horrors in my opinion. But but there was so in part two, why was Art's eyes a little different? Like they went from like a
Oh yeah.
black color to
Oh,
like
that's
there was a
easy.
little bit of
Well, that's
change.
actually in part one too. It's a lot of people just don't notice it though. But it's after the scene where I get conked out by the exterminator, I all of a sudden have different color eyes. And I like to say, for continuity reasons for the film, it's because Art was wearing contact lenses and they got knocked out when he got conked on the head. But that's not the official reason. That's what I use because we're just like, oh, most people don't notice it. So I'm glad you picked up on it. But what really happened was that night we are going to film that scene, my one contact lens had a rip in it. And the other pair that we had were these big sclera lenses that did not really fit my eyes. So I couldn't move my eyes around to look around and stuff like that. It was just extremely painful. It felt like I had daggers going to my eyes. And I'm like, so much of my acting I do with my eyes. And I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this with these contacts. And I'm like, shoot, what are we going to do? We don't have time. We have to film this tonight. So Damien's like, screw it. We'll just do it without the contacts. We'll just have your natural eye color. And we'll just, from this point on, we'll just have green eyes going forward. So every scene that we had to film after that, I had my green eyes instead of black eyes.
Okay.
And so we just kept that in part two. So I hear rumors that we might be going back to black eyes in part three.
Okay. Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
ask that question. I was just wondering. And before we get to obviously the big kill scene, that I would have to say, I don't know how you beat the Saw scene, but it may be kind of up there, right up there with it. The costume
Yeah.
shop scene, I love that, which with
Oh God, yes.
with Jonathan Davis, who played Ricky, and that was at the
Yes.
Abracadabra, which I've been to in New York City. The costume
It's an
shop, is that correct?
amazing costume shop. It's huge. That's
Yeah.
where the Macy's parade gets a lot of their costumes and stuff like that too. So we were actually there the week of the Macy's parade filming. So they were having to deal with us at the same time trying to prep all these costumes for the parade. But that was a fun place to film in. That was like they would just close the shop at night and we would film overnight until they opened the next morning. So we
Okay, I was
had the whole
wondering.
place to ourselves, and it was great. I was like, I love it because in between takes, I was just exploring that whole entire shop and just looking around and having fun with things in there. And it's and that scene itself is like that. Damien wrote it in the script. He's like, Art plays with props, with glasses and stuff like that. So I didn't know what I was going to have there until I went that day, and they had all those glasses set up, and so Damien just let me play around with. I went down that whole entire side of glasses and played with all the different things with each set, at least two or three things with every single pair of glasses. I was playing with whoopee cushions and noisemakers, everything. I was doing different takes with the little
The
thing.
noisemaker
Like,
scene's great.
yeah,
The
yeah, one
disappointment
of
in Art's
those.
face.
Oh yeah. Oh, one of them I actually eat it. That was
Oh,
actually in
really?
the script where Art eats it. So yeah, and so he's like, if you can't, if you're gonna put that in your mouth, you're gonna buy it. So he just and eats it. And it's
That
just
was a
like,
great scene.
yeah,
That
it's
was a
like, so
fun scene.
Damien. Oh God, there was so much laughter going on that night. It's just like, but Damien had so many options with that. Same thing with the possum scene. I did so many things with that possum. There's a reason I had that stick in my hand because I was playing fetch with it. I was like treating it like it was a dog trying to do dog tricks with him. I was doing a puppet show with him, and I did like the whole
What
play
was the
dead.
organs with the possum? What was the organs for that? What were you guys using for that? Was
In
that the same
like
thing as
in
the first film?
Yeah, pretty much like hamburger meat and like like the sausage casings and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and they had
Um,
some giblets in there too, so that was fun. I didn't realize that was actually a real possum that had been taxidermied, though. I thought it was just a really well made prop, and I was like, they didn't tell me until much later. It was like, oh no, that was a real possum. I'm like, oh wow.
a- and the little pale girl. I mean, she was. I mean, I don't. The actress
Oh,
was great. I mean,
Amelie's
I know.
fantastic.
Yeah, she was great. And you guys had what?
Absolutely
So
fantastic.
everything that Art had black, she had. Was it the costumes? Were the colors were different? Like everything that she had black,
Exactly.
you had white. It was vice
Yeah.
versa. The
And her
teeth were
teeth are
rearranged.
reversed. Yeah.
Yep.
She had hair on her arms, stuff like that. So Amelie, that was like that the possum scene was my first day working with Amelie, and she was just an absolute natural. She just because I used to be a camp counselor. I was in charge of skits and drama club. So, I was used to children her age, having to direct them all the time. And like, okay, here, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And I didn't have to do that with her. She just naturally played along with me. I didn't have to tell her to do anything. And Damien really didn't have to tell her to do anything. She just naturally just went along with what I was doing. I was like, wow, this kid's good.
And I've heard you say that you've been really lucky with the chemistry on the set, right? Because first of all, Laura, Lavera, her performance was absolutely amazing. Elliot did a great job in that movie.
Yeah.
Kylie, who played Brooke, but the scene that everyone obviously, and I remember, and you probably remember this, David, I'm sure you and Damien both knew this. So when this movie, before it came out, there was a couple previews of it, like I think in the UK. So people were shooting some of the shit on their phones, some of these scenes, and uploading it onto YouTube and stuff, which I'm sure is like, you have to expect it these days. There's no way to get around it, right?
Yeah.
But that bedroom scene, I think, was one of the first scenes. Besides, I think the coroner scene was the first one that probably made it on. Because, I'll admit, I was so excited for the film because everybody knew it was like, you're waiting for it to come out, And this shit started, like, showing up on YouTube. And that bedroom scene, that has to be, even watching it today, like, and I've seen that movie a bunch of times.
Yeah.
It is really, like, a brutal scene. And that was a 5-day shoot, right?
Yeah, that was a 5-day shoot in the middle of a snowstorm upstate New York in this barn that we had transformed into a studio. And it was like, so like that was not a real bedroom because it was like, there was no way we're going to cause that kind of mess in an actual person's bedroom. There was just absolutely no way. But yeah, that was 5 days. And I have to say, like, Casey Hartnett, who played Allie, she's like the MVP of the film in that scene. It's like, she brought it 5 days in a row. And it's like, the funny thing is about Casey is she's such a very quiet, reserved person in real life. Her first day on set was when they were doing the school scene, and she had laryngitis, so she could barely talk. So they had ADR all that scene later on. And so we were all like, is she going to be able to really handle this scene the way she needs to handle it with all the screaming and everything? Because this is a very violent scene. Is she going to be able to have the chutzpah to really give it all? And so, oh my God, 5 days. She did that for 5 days. Right?
No heat, covered in blood.
No heat, covered in blood, just full throttle every single take, just knocked it out of the park. It's like Damien called, when he was editing that scene, he called me up because he was hearing her screaming constantly while editing that scene. He's like, dude, I'm getting nauseous just hearing her. I'm like, it just tells you the quality of her performance in that. It's like, it's making the guy that filmed it, that created that scene, nauseous himself. It's like, she did such a fantastic job in that scene. She got stuck to the floor. There was so much blood on her that Damien had to use a spray bottle to unstick her from the floor constantly. And it's like, and wow. She never complained. I am the biggest, whiniest bitch on set when I get uncomfortable. I'm like, every single one of these women I work with in both films outdoes me when it comes to that kind of stuff. None of them complain, and I'm the one, ow, my knees hurt.
And I didn't even mention that Catherine in the saw scene, she got stuck in the adhesive underneath because it was actually so they put a body, what was it, a body cast over her during the saw scene, right? And she actually got stuck in it.
Yeah, she got stuck in the mold, and it was a full body mold, and she got stuck in it. They almost had to take her to the hospital in that mold. So they were going to have to put her in the back of a truck. It's like, but they slowly got her out of that thing. It's like, oh my God, that's horrible. So it's like, yeah, these women that I work with, my God, I don't know why people say women are supposedly the weaker sex. There's bullshit.
Yeah,
they give birth. They give birth.
Yeah, it's like the things that they go through every month. That's all I gotta say right there. It's like I had one of my old girlfriends. For a few months, I was having sympathy pains when she had her period for some reason. I was getting down in that same. I was like, God, I feel like someone's repeatedly punching me in the stomach. Is this even close to what you deal with?
And they're like, no, it's not fucking close.
It's even worse. It's even worse. I'm like, oh my God, how do you function?
Listen, my wife's just turned 52, and I can tell you, her family has a weird thing. My daughter's got it too, but when she
Mhm.
goes through that, I'm like, it looks like an Art the Clown murder scene in the back.
Oh.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, this is how are you not dead? Like you
Yeah.
should, no blood like this much should come out of a person, like
No,
That's why
it's
they
just
like on purpose. You know what I mean? So
no.
yeah,
no, my wife will tell
Women
you,
are
my
amazing.
wife's,
That,
yeah, they're
yeah,
amazing. Like if I get sick, I'm on the couch dying with a cold. My wife, she's sick,
yeah.
she's still running the household, so it's
yep.
like totally
Oh my God,
um,
we are the biggest wusses when it comes to us getting hurt. It's just it's like,
exactly.
I wanted to
and
ask you a
that's how I am
question.
on set. I'm constantly just like, I'm cold. Oh, this is hurting my knees.
Fucking clown
eh.
shoes.
Yeah.
What's it like? Is it like a pain in the ass to wear those teeth?
It can be after a while. It's like kind of like wearing a retainer. So it's like
Does
they
that
make me drool a lot too. So
because
it was more of a pain in the ass when we were using the original makeup, which we had a gelatin mask that it was made out of. So the gelatin disintegrates very easily when liquids get on it. So my mouth was always falling apart. But we switched to a foam latex mask. That is like a godsend. It holds up so much better now. I don't have to really worry about those kind of problems. It's like Damon was constantly having to send me to triage on the old mask during the first and second film, and it's like, ugh.
How long
It's
is
just
the time to put that outfit on? To put out, they actually do the makeup, the painting, and stuff.
Now it originally took about 4 hours, but we've streamlined it, so we found shortcuts. So we've gotten it down to about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how much battle damage I got to have on my face and stuff like that, and blood continuity. The blood continuity is the biggest pain in the butt too. It's just like because sometimes we have to guess because we don't film everything in order, and so we have to guess how much blood I'm going to have on myself at some points because we'll film like a later kill scene before we film an earlier kill scene. It's like, okay, so how do we get to this point? Where are the splatters going to be? And we try to just match it up as we go along. And God, the amount of continuity photos we have to take just for the small little specks of blood on my face is it's a process.
It's crazy. And yeah. And did you come up with so on that bedroom scene before we get off of that, did you come up with the salt? Who came up with the salt and the bleach idea? And the great scene is when at first
Yeah.
she comes downstairs and Art has himself a drink of water. I thought that was just like,
Yeah. Okay. There are two
cool.
different stories there. So yeah, with the salt and the bleach, that was both Damien and I spitballing with each other. I think he had he definitely came up with the bleach idea. I think I might have come up with the salt idea. It was like the whole saying, pour salt in the wound. And so it's like, I think that, I'm assaulting her, it was like, I was just joking around. He's like, God, that's even worse if we've never seen any of that happen. Because we knew we wanted to do something within her wound. Like I think he had like an idea of squirting Windex into the wound and stuff like that. And it eventually became the salt. But speaking of that, the water scene, going down and getting the drink of water, that was actually, I was supposed to take a break in the middle of killing her. That's why I ran out of the room. That's when I was supposed to grab the bleach and everything like that. But it was a happy accident we had on set. That night we had, you see the broken window down there, right?
Yes.
Originally in the script, I was supposed to do a whole thing where Allie just hears a noise outside and she goes downstairs, and I'm supposed to like break through the window and just start chasing her immediately. And so we're going to set that up, and they take the sugar glass or whatever, the prop glass we use for the window out, and it was already broken. And they're like, oh God, it's already late at night. We have to film this tonight. What the hell are we going to do? It's like, this is big part of the scene that we got to film. And like Damien and and I and some of the fuzz guys, we just put our heads together and we're like, well, we have that other scene where I'm like, why don't we just move that here? And instead, she comes down, sees the broken glass, and what if Art's getting a drink of water? Or he's just made himself at home. He knows he already has her, so he's just making himself at home, which I think is even creepier. Because he's
another
in
one of
the
those
house.
scenes that really
Yeah.
just an awesome little addition.
Yeah, and I love it. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie because it's like that's something you've never seen before, with the killer just nonchalantly just going around the house, making himself at home, and it's like, okay, now for the fun part.
Yeah, exactly. And you did so. And one thing I forgot to ask you also, you did the voiceovers for the Art Krispies, didn't you?
Oh,
was
yes,
your
Art
voice for the
Krispies.
commercials.
Yes,
thought so.
a fun surprise at every bite.
That was actually a placeholder too. That was I think originally Damien just wanted to get a voice actor to come in and do that announcement. So he's like, "Oh, David, can you just make do this voiceover for me just so I have a placeholder?" And I was like, "Oh, I can't do anything half-assed." So I was like, "I'll just play around with it, do my Joker voice for it, just for shits and giggles." And so I sent it in to him. He's like, "Dude, I'm going to use this." It's like, I don't now I don't have to hire a voice actor for this. I'm just going to use this for it.
Nice. That's
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And
It works out, man.
Yeah.
It seems to always work out.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like this movie is full of little happy accidents like that. We had another one where like yeah, you know when Sienna stabs me in the head with the rebar, it was originally supposed to stay in my head and I was going to pull it out later on. And when we first were like, Damien had to build a hole in he had spent hours on this skull apparatus that was going to fit under my cowl where that thing went in. And as soon as we're starting to put it in, the whole thing just breaks. And we're like, son of a bitch. And we're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it's like, we're like, well, why don't we just have her just pull it right out? And I just kind of whoop, whoop, and fall backwards. And it's like, okay, we'll do that. And another one is probably the best jump scare in the movie is when I come in and put that purse down on the cash register table.
Great.
That was not in the script. It's like we had filmed stuff with Sienna's purse downstairs, all the stuff, with her going by the door with me and stuff like that. And we realized after we had already started filming the scene upstairs that, oh shit, we didn't bring the purse up. She didn't bring the purse with her. We're like, oh God, now we're going to have to go refilm all that stuff downstairs because she has to get her money out of her purse. And we're like, oh God. And that was my idea where I was like, guys, why don't I just bring the purse up with me? They're like, oh, okay. And so that we turned it into probably one of the biggest jump scares in the movie was that it's a bam.
It's a great addition to that scene. That's something you do when you first see it. You're like, oh shit, I mean, and it's kind of got a little bit of humor to it. You're like, oh,
yeah, but it's like that's the thing. It's like when you're on a tight budget and you're on a tight time schedule, you sometimes have those moments where you just have to come up with another solution. You don't have time to redo things or remake props and stuff like that. You just have to MacGyver a new version of the scene right there on the spot, and that's what we've done. It's like that's what's so cool about these films. We have that freedom to do that, and it's such a collaborative effort. It's not just like Damien's idea or my idea. It's like it's the whole team effort coming together. Like, okay, what can we do here to make this better? Well, what can we do to improve this situation? Blah blah blah. It's a team effort because we're all in it to make a really good movie.
Yeah, and and you guys shot the Brook scene was shot in Philly at the Fright Factory.
Yes, yeah.
How was that location to shoot? Because I think that was a no heat situation too, right?
Boy, that was a miserable place. I mean, it's a great location, but it's like, it's only open during the Halloween season for the haunt. So the rest of the year that place is closed, and so they don't have heat in there. And it was very cold, very miserable. They had like a sewage problem because like they apparently had a few floors above us. They had been putting a new like sewage system in. And they didn't connect the pipes the right way. So like one day we coming in and we're like, God, it smells like a bathroom down here right now. And we see this leak coming from the ceiling at this one point. And I'm like, oh, and it's like, God, it just smells horrible. It smells like piss and poop. We're like, God almighty. And what had happened is like the third floor had flooded into the second floor, which had flooded into the floor we were on. And so it was just sewage coming through the ceiling, and they had to come in and fix it the next day. It was just disgusting. But it's like the room, the final confrontation room. That was just, God. There was so much dust and crap in the air in there that we're all breathing in. It's like that was just disgusting. It was cold. The place was haunted too. We had weird stuff happen there. But we made the best.
Scenery wise, it looked awesome. I mean,
scenery wise, oh my God, it's amazing. I mean, it was. That's what's so cool about the place. I'm like that. We didn't have to build any of that stuff. That all was there, and it was a perfect location for the Terrifier. And I was like, this is great. if we only could have filmed in a warmer time period.
Well, that's the one thing, Damien. I think with a lot of the locations you guys picked, I know the first film you guys filmed in Trenton. I suppose, I think that warehouse was absolutely destroyed. I'd read that it was actually a total, like, what you see is pretty much what it was.
Yeah. That place is disgusting. Like that bathroom, especially. That's exactly how that bathroom looked in there. I mean, when I'm on the floor and I come up with, I have the wig on and stuff like that. I came up from the floor and my whole entire body was black. I don't know what, but it was just the grime that was in that place. It's like there were used condoms and needles all over the place in there. I think it was being used as a legal chop shop. It was just like that place was sketchy.
Some true Trenton.
Yeah.
That, huh?
Yeah.
So, and so you guys going to start shooting the new Terrifier 3 in January? Is that correct? Or is that just kind of the target?
Yeah, that's the plan. I think probably late January, I think is the starting point. I know Damien right now is in pre-production. He was meeting with some makeup teams earlier this week in LA and stuff like that. And hopefully we've applied for the interim agreement with SAG and stuff like that, so we can start filming. But they're taking forever because they're so backlogged with interim agreements right now. They've even told us, like, yeah, the strike's probably going to be over by the time you even need this agreement anyway. But we can't start casting until the strike's over. We get that interim agreement. So that's a little bit annoying. So I'm hoping, knock on wood, that the strike is ending soon, so we can get that going. But the good thing is we don't have as many people to cast this time around because we have a lot of returning characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, how was it working with Elliot? I thought he did a good job in the movie.
Oh, Elliot's great. He's my little buddy. I fought really hard for him to be in the movie too, because it was between him and another kid that was much younger. And I just thought he and Sienna looked so much like brother and sister. And, Sarah looked like their mom. They looked like a family. And that's a rare thing to see in movies where you actually have the casting that actually looks like a family. And he was just so good. He was so good. And they were worried because, he was hitting puberty and he was growing at that time. They're like, oh, he's actually almost taller than Lauren at that point. I'm like, well, that's okay because, that happens. I was taller than my sister at one point around that same age. So it's like we could just put a line in there where just a throwaway line about how she's like, oh, you're no longer my little brother anymore or something like that, fixes that problem. So, but I felt so sorry for him because he had to keep going back in and again and again and again for, callbacks. And I'm like, gosh, please just cast him. You want to cast him. Just cast him. He's perfect.
we all know him from, he does, we're a heavy metal show also. We do heavy metal music. Like, he does the whole YouTube channel. Yeah, which he actually, in the movie, you could see like a King Diamond poster and Overkill poster. You see in the room, he's got all that stuff decked out.
Yeah, his mom's artwork's up in the room too, which is really cool.
Okay, I said
like that was his stuff. Those were his albums in the room. He really helped decorate his own room for the movie, which was really cool. Elliot's awesome. He's my buddy. He's my little buddy.
Yeah, that was great. I thought the mom Sarah did a great job. I thought because at first you didn't know. You're like, okay, she's a little, she's bitching a little bit, but then you get it's like a family. It's a real family.
It is a real family. That's the thing. It's like I feel like Barb gets a lot of hate unjustly, and it's like no, you don't understand. This is a real mom. I'm like, it's
a single mom raising kids in a shitty.
Yeah, this woman has gone through hell. It's like she had just lost her husband. She's trying to raise these two kids on her own. They're both causing problems that day, and she's on her, she's having job struggles. Like everything is like the world is just crashing down upon her, and she's trying to keep her sanity. It is just like she's having a very, very, very bad day, and it's just and it shows. And so like that's why she's such a so much during that, but like that, it makes perfect sense. She's at her wit's end. Like one of those moments in there I loved is when Sienna gets that chicken finger that she's making, and Barb whaps her in the head. Yeah. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know how many times my mom did that to me. I'm like, that was such a real moment. And I love it.
You actually felt bad when she got killed. You didn't want to see. You're like, oh shit, man.
And it was such a shocking death too, because it came out of nowhere. It just boom.
Well, you have done that twice as Art the Clown, because when Tara got shot, that to me was like, wow, what a way to like, you see all these. You never see Jason pull out a gun and shoot anybody like that. You might the harpoon, I guess, but like. it was just a very like, wow, they kind of took us to where we are today in this world. I was like, oh, it makes sense. He's just like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
use this. And then obviously when with the mom, and I just, like I said, that was, before we get off Terrifier, I know we've kept you forever. We'll get to we'll mention the mean one at the end. I wanted to, so when she cuts off your head in that movie, there's a
Yeah.
reference that her dad caught her cutting off minnows' heads
Uh-huh.
back in the day. Does
Good
that
catch.
relate to her does that relate to
Yes.
her cutting off your head?
Yes. It's foreshadowing.
Okay. I wanted to ask that. I was wondering
Yeah.
if that was part of like,
Oh yeah.
Tony's into this horror shit, so he's gonna pull out stuff most people
Damien.
wouldn't pick up.
Damien is like, there's so many things that, because I've now read the script for part 3, so I know what's going to happen next.
oh shit.
And it's just like Damien has really thought things out, and there's so many hints and clues, and there's so much foreshadowing. It's like that, because I know some people are like, "Oh my god, you didn't explain anything." It's like, yeah, I know. Did Rowling explain everything in book 2 of Harry Potter? No. It's like he's got it all mapped out in his head. He knows exactly where everything's going. And it's just like, yeah,
Awesome.
Dame is brilliant. He's got some great ideas. There's some, oh my god, part 3.
Yeah, I can't wait. I definitely can't wait. And you guys are doing, so part 2 is going to be in the theaters. I think Bloody Disgusting's part of that. They're putting that in the November.
Yeah,
back in the
November
theater?
1st. Yeah, November 1st. And we have an extra scene in there
I was
that we've
gonna
added
ask
after
that.
the credits. It's about 2 or 3 minute long. It's segueing straight into part 3. So you're going to get an idea with the theme of part 3 and the direction we're going to be going with part 3. And I think it's going to make a lot of people very excited. And it's something that's never happened. There've been, yeah, it's something that's really never happened with a slasher icon series before.
I'm
would
excited to
say.
see it.
Yeah.
I'm going. I'm taking my son.
Yeah.
He doesn't know it yet, but because
Yeah.
I went and looked to make sure, because I'm in Tampa, so
Yeah.
we usually get the cool shit, but sometimes we
Mhm.
don't. But
Yeah.
I looked, and our AMC is actually playing it on the
Oh,
first.
fantastic!
So,
Well, you're gonna
I'm
love
gonna
it.
take him. Yeah, I'm gonna take him. I'm hoping I see people puking. I
Yeah.
hope I catch it.
And I'll
'Cause-
give one extra little thing away. Is like for part 3, you're gonna see a lot more Victoria this time around, because
I
like
was
that's one of the
wondering about
things that Damon always regretted. We weren't really able to flesh out her character that much in part 1. So he's, for spoilers, people that have seen part 2 know by the end of part 2 that the pale girl has taken over Victoria. So
awesome. Awesome.
Okay.
just wait. I think Victoria is going to be stealing the show in part 3 in a lot of ways.
Are they going to do it Indiegogo for this one, or is it?
I don't think so. I'm not sure, but who knows if we actually need some more funding. I have a feeling they would do something like that, but I don't know.
Okay.
That's yeah.
So and let's go to. I just actually saw this movie. Saw it twice this week with my wife. My wife is a big. My wife is the kind of person that like 2 months before Christmas comes, she has the Hallmark Network on when we're in the States, because they're always running Christmas movies early. And the Mean One, which I thought was awesome, man.
Thank you.
There was just so much little things about that movie. First of all, they don't ever say the Grinch, but it's like
No.
like in the bar scene when the bartender, you think she's gonna say it, it's like interrupted. But
Finch! You know who the bartender was, though? Most people don't. This is a great Seuss Easter egg. The woman that played the bartender was one of the Who moms that adopted the Grinch in the Jim Carrey movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah,
And
it's a little inside joke there. So it's like, that's great.
that, and so in the costume, that was a dog mask, right? That you guys had repainted.
Yeah, that was a dog mask. It was a dog prosthetic mask, and it was not the most fun mask to wear because they had built it, I guess, for a child's nose, and they didn't put air holes in there for the nose, and so I was mouth breathing. They had tried to put little nose holes in there for me, but they were just not that effective. So when you're doing fight scenes and also in warm weather, it's not the most fun thing. It's kind of you're the whole time. I felt like I was panting like a dog a lot, but it was also kind of funny. It's like I understand now why Jim Carrey talked the way he did, because was talking the same. I was just kind of the whole entire time. Like, I said, Max, I want you to tell. It was just the whole. I just couldn't
Now that you
stop
say that,
talking
yeah,
like
I'm
that.
thinking of Carrie's
Yeah,
voice in that. Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah. It's like, sorry, I had to readjust
No problem.
my seating in here, but yeah, no earthquake.
No, right? No tornadoes.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but that was about a 3-4 hour makeup job, and it's that all that is airbrushed on there, and it's like Tatiana, my makeup artist, is fantastic. She's a master with that airbrush.
Oh, and
It looked legit.
the
It looked
hands were
legit.
awesome too. Yeah, the hands and
Yeah,
your hand movements. Does that relate to? I know your aunt was deaf. Did that
mhm,
relate to like dealing like because your hand movements and that you could always tell when you were about to
yeah.
when a scene was going to happen because you would see the flickering of the fingers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's
A
how
lot of
something
that
like
I got that from Stefan. Because when we did Grinch, he was very animated with his fingers because he had these amazing gloves that he wore for the. Oh, yeah, also too, when I played him, we had these gloves where they had these extensions coming off the fingertips, and then so that he had like these big long fingers, and then he had hair coming off him, so that it was like this huge hand. So he could do all these cool things with his hands that would reach to the very back of the audience. So he utilized his fingers a lot, just just as character wise, and so I wanted to bring some Stephanisms to my to the mean one, and I thought that was it's my little homage, my love, to Stefan right there.
and they didn't know that you had worked on when you got that job. Did they
No,
know
they
that
didn't
you had
know.
done the Grinch?
Yeah, so I was like, "This is amazing! You want me to play this character?" They're like, "Do you?" He's just like the director Steven's like, "So how much do you know about this character?" Like, "Oh, probably more than most."
4 or 5 years of touring on
Yeah,
it, right?
I've
Or
celebrated over 300 Christmases in Whoville, so I mean, I think I know my stuff now.
and the Santa scene, which is I think is one of the Santa scene and the final scene because I think the final scene
Yeah.
just has a lot of. I'm just gonna. I don't know. I don't want. I guess people haven't seen. It has a lot of heart to it. I'll put it like that. The final scene, which was excellent. The battle scene with Cindy. I mean, that
Mhm.
was a great thing. But
Oh, I had an amazing
Santa.
stunt actor for that. Robin was just fantastic. He made me look like a badass.
I was going to ask that. Did you do some of the stunts in that movie, or was it a
I
lot
did.
of
I
actually?
did. Like Robin did a lot of the fight scene with Cindy at that point, and he would also come in and double for me for other things because I was only on set for 3 days, and they still had some things they had to film that I wasn't able to be there for. So like when you see the fingers going across the ground, that was him actually doing that.
Okay.
I was like, yeah, but I'm like but he watched everything I was doing so he could match everything up with my body movements. And I want Robin to be my official stunt double from now on because he and I work so well together. And he's like, now when we did like the scene with the Santa Con, I actually did my own stunts in that scene, but he was there the whole entire time, ready to go on for me if I needed him to. And I think he was in full costume and makeup, just waiting to go in. I think he was a little disappointed, and I was like, "I'm sorry, man. I'm having too much fun."
Well, that was a great scene. That's
Yeah.
one of those scenes when you see the Santas acting like dicks. You're almost like when Ricky's
Ah,
telling Art the
God.
clown to calm down. You're
Oh,
like, it's a big
I was
mistake, man.
channeling my waiting days because I had to work SantaCon all the time here in New York City, so I had to deal with those kind of assholes,
Oh, it's
and
a
it's just like,
nightmare, isn't it?
oh, I love that scene because it's like I finally get this stress out just throwing these people around. And so that was me and a bunch of real stunt actors, people that worked on Power Rangers, Marvel movies, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, this is amazing. I had a great time. But my favorite part was the guy that comes out wearing the inflatable Christmas tree.
Christmas
That thing.
tree.
Oh my god, I was dying laughing.
He
I had so
deflates
much
when you
fun.
stab him, right? I mean, it's
Oh
like
my god, I was dying. I was
the meat
dying.
grinder.
Yeah, the meat
Yeah,
that was fun. Just throwing that girl into the meat grinder. It's just like all of that, lassoing the person, knocking people off. God, I was having a blast. I was having
and
just
the
a
joy
blast.
on you could just tell the joy on
Oh
the
yeah,
mean one's face. He was just enjoying it. It was that was another one where at the end of the movie you got the hidden scene at the end
hmm
with the we'll bring like the head in the box, which kind of has that seven kind of thing going on there.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but I was really the mean one. Ed, what did you think of that movie? I thought it
Yeah, it was
was
great. I was wondering why. I know it originally was supposed to come out in what 2022, right?
No,
That's when
supposed
it.
to, we filmed it all last year. Yeah, so yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Last year was 2022. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
duh.
because I thought, man, was this released and then like they
Yes,
re-released it?
it had a limited release last Christmas, right before Christmas
Okay,
in early December. Very very limited run in theaters, but yeah, we filmed that thing in 14 days. It was a
it's
quick. It
because
was a
my
quick,
wife, like I
low
said,
budget. It's just like it's just
my wife
another
won't
one of
watch
those.
the Terrifier movies. She will not. My daughter won't watch them. But I showed her the preview for that when me and Tony were talking, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll watch that
Oh,
for
it's
sure."
such
And
a
it's
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 such a
fun.
fun, silly. It's that's the thing. It's like don't I always tell people don't expect Terrifier. This is not
right.
Terrifier. This is like the Hallmark Channel made a horror movie.
Yep.
It's
And
it's very campy and intentionally so.
Well, I
was that
think
character based on Bigfoot a little bit, like the way you carried
Yes,
yourself?
yes,
Okay,
that's
because I
exactly
noticed
yeah.
going back to the
wow.
vulture thing for
Hmm.
art. So it was kind of like the Bigfoot, the way just the stance he had and when he would walk and
Yeah.
stuff.
The swinging of the arms, all that kind of stuff. That was total Bigfoot that I was pulling from there. He lives in a
That's
cave.
great.
All it's just like he's just. It was fun. I love that the final. I love that final scene with
It's
me and
amazing.
Cindy.
Yeah.
That was. I actually the writer also plays her dad in the movie, so he was there for that scene, and he was bawling his eyes out at the end of on the last take of that because it was like it was
It's a
it,
strong
it,
scene. It was really
it's a
cool how it
strong
was done.
scene, but it is funny because it wasn't originally supposed to end that way. She was actually supposed to get me in the heart with an adrenaline needle, and so that was supposed to make my heart explode. But it's like I think it worked better with instead of her actually getting revenge against him, they come to a mutual forgiveness and understanding with each other, and that's what made his heart expand 3 sizes and explode. And
Yeah, it was.
I love that ending. I was like, this is. It's like when they told me the new version, I was like, oh, this is so much better. I mean, I love the idea of the adrenaline, but I love this other version as well. It felt so much better. It gave the Grinch, the mean one, a character arc in that movie, and it gave
Yeah.
Cindy closure. It's like, oh man, there's so many nuances to that movie that people don't really understand, I think, and that's what's like. It's a great film. It's like
Yeah,
it's
and
low
even
budget, but
the decor
yeah,
in it, like the weapons were made out of like the candy cane. I mean,
hmm
just everything was done really well. And
yeah,
like I said, I was definitely a good movie to see in the holidays, especially because we don't have many of those horror Christmas movies,
yeah.
So I thought it was done really well. And I know we've taken a shitload of your time, but I just
Oh
really
shoot!
fast.
Wow, yeah.
It's been like almost 2 hours. It's crazy,
Holy
but
crap!
so the Dead Place. When
Yes.
is so? Do you have four? I have three things on the list for you that you've done that's not out. You have the
Hmm.
Dead Place, right, which is in post production.
Yes, that's in
Um,
post production. I talk in that one finally.
yeah, there you go. Uh,
Yeah,
and Rough Cut, which is in pre production, right?
that one I don't know too much about. I actually haven't even signed a contract for that one yet, so I have no idea what's going on there. That was months ago that was being talked about. So I don't say I'm doing something until I've actually signed a contract and all that kind
Yes,
of
yeah.
stuff. So
And
yeah,
Stream, which is what Daniel Harris is in it, Dee Wallace and Jeffrey Combs.
yeah.
Is that when's that coming out?
I think they're going to probably be making an announcement about that sometime soon, but I imagine it's going to be coming out sometime next year. But it's like the cast. I mean, it's a lot of the Terrifier 2 team made that one. It's Damien did all the practical effects for it, but like the cast for this thing is just insane. It's like the Expendables as a horror movie. It's just like so many horror legends are in this movie. It's like being on set was just mind blowing because it's like Dee Wallace, Felissa Rose, Daniel Harris, Daniel Roebuck, Terry Alexander, Jeffrey Combs, Tony
Oh my
Todd.
goodness.
There are more people I cannot name yet because they haven't been announced yet. But it's just like, and I think one of the people that's in this movie, this might be his final film he ever does too, and it's such an iconic person. I'm like, holy crap, how did we get this person? So it's just like it's a fun film. It's a great solid film. I play another silent killer in that one too, but it's fun. Got some fun creative kills in that one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and eventually, hopefully, I know you want to be the Joker one day, which I think you would be
Oh yeah,
excellent at. So
yeah.
that would be
James Gunn, man, put me in, coach. Let me, because I want to do it right. I'm tired of Hollywood just bastardizing that character. They keep ruining him. They try to make him all kind of edgy and different. And I'm like, no,
Yeah,
just keep it true
the
to the comic book.
the Joker. Did you see the what they added off the Batman, the last
Uh,
Batman movie?
hated that
And when
scene.
I was like,
Hated it.
thank you for not putting that in the movie because that
Well,
was
even the
not
scene that he had in the movie, I hate. I thought that was the weakest part of the movie. The rest of that movie Mwah, fantastic movie.
Yes.
He was the weakest part of the movie.
Right.
It was just weak. I was like, this is because he's just trying to be creepy. I'm like, that's not Joker. He's not trying to
No.
be creepy. The Joker is a showman. He is a master wordsmith. He loves to play with words as much as he loves to play with people in their minds.
That's why I love
It's like,
Caesar so much on that role. Because
Yes.
Oh my goodness, man.
Yes.
He was epic. He was an epic character.
he's
and
theatrical.
He
Yeah.
fit because even if you look at the Penguin was great because he looked like the Penguin. Even
Oh,
the
he's
Riddler,
fantastic.
But the Joker had such a nuance because his purple was what you pictured the Joker would really
Yes.
look like. The green hair, the way he wore it. Yes, 100%.
He brought the comic book to life, and that's what they should be doing with these. But they're like, let's make it different. Let's try to make it uber realistic and stuff. I'm like, no, that's what's not. That's comic books movies are fun. Oh, comic books in general are fun for a reason because they go big and they go
Right.
crazy with some things. You don't have to keep everything just realistic. You can go campy. You can go fun with it. You can go a little bit crazy with it, and especially with a character like Joker. Just go full throttle with him. You don't. I don't like people trying to make him creepy. I'm just like, no, it's what he does that is creepy in its own way, and it's just like it's like how art is. It's this theatricality and stuff. That's what makes him creepy. He's not trying to be creepy. He just is.
Right.
And it's so nice to see, like, with the Terrifier movies, because I have to be honest, like, the Halloween that came in, some of that shit that came out last year, I just was not, it was just like, I can't understand how it gets, like, I look at Terrifier, and I have to say, like, in the last, and Ed knows, I've been preaching this on our show, too. I've mentioned it at least half of our episodes that I talk about this movie with people, other musicians that are on it. I always mention when we talk about films. I mean, it deserves, first of all, I'm so glad the cult following it has, because it is,
Me too.
And I think Art the Clown is, and I said this when I saw part one, you had Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, blah, blah, Pumpkinhead. We have all these. Art the Clown is that iconic figure. And I do believe that.
Absolutely.
And I think for you, David, I think you're going to, what you've already gone down. I mean, you're pretty much in history already. And anybody who knows the films like that, this is a historic character. And,
you're going to have a vast amount of films under you by the time it's all said and done.
I hope
cons are going to be no problem for you, man. There'll be no more no more dinner rolls, dude.
Because I want to keep. I want that like Doug Jones or Gary Oldman or Andy Serkis type of career trajectory, just playing great character roles where you can just lose yourself in the character and the crazy makeup or whatever you're doing. It's just like because that's fun for me. It's like they don't have to be lead roles. I'm fine with just one or two scenes. I'm just like, as long as it's something fun, something I can
you
really
can do voice work though, so that's twofold for a director to be able to have somebody that they can put in a character that can do the voices too.
Yeah,
that's what made Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
if you think about it, because he was able to do all the goofy stuff that he did.
Living Color. I mean, that's when Jim Carrey was.
Yeah.
That was the one I first saw Jim Carrey, and he was
when he was the white guy.
Well, he was amazing. I mean, but I'm really happy to see like these films. First of all, I think Damien's brilliant, but I see, like I said, I see the Halloweens. I'm not even like the newer Saws. It's just not my thing. To me, it's like a lot of filler. When I see Terrifier, I know that like when I turn off that movie, I'm like, okay, you know what you've seen, and it's pretty much he
tried. He kept saying, "Will you go watch the fucking movie?"
Yeah, I was telling him.
And the thing was, I didn't want to watch it by myself, because I just in case I'm like, well, except for had I known my son had balls, I would have, would have watched it sooner. Yeah, because I don't know if you saw the new Tony. Did you see the new? I told you I saw The Exorcist, and yesterday, and they had a preview for this new movie about an evil pilgrim, and I was like,
Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, the Eli Roth movie.
Yeah, and I was like, that looks like it has the. I mean, they were kind of very limited on the preview, but it looks like it could either go. Not Art the Clown, obviously, but they have the potential to make it killer.
Yeah.
Or pull a Halloween.
Well, you know what that's based off of is back when Death Proof, Grindhouse, when Death Proof and all that came out.
I remember.
That was one of the fake trailers they had during Grindhouse
They did a
was.
few of those, right?
Yeah, and that's what this is based on. That Eli Roth finally made that trailer into an actual movie, and I'm stoked to see it. I am so
That's what I was
excited for this
hoping
one.
with
Yeah,
Eli Roth doing it. I'm like this. Again, The Exorcist wasn't bad,
yeah,
but it's not The Exorcist.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah,
original one.
yeah.
But
I love Hollywood, like holiday themed horror movies, especially
yes,
slashers. I think there's something fun about them. Like any slasher set around a holiday, especially Christmas, that's always fun. It's just like
And the
it just
Terrifier movies had the whole Halloween thing going on, so it's
yeah,
great, man. It has that
yeah,
vibe, the
yeah.
look, the set, even the outdoors. It's like it's got that kind of look
Hmm.
to it.
But it's like
You know,
I especially love like slashers set around Christmas or that time of year. It's always those are. I mean, I loved Violent Night last year. That was such a fun movie. I was
yeah,
like,
it's
yes, yes,
good movie.
yes, more of this. And it's like that's why I'm hope that's what my hope is with like films like Terrifier and Mean One. I hope we're encouraging other filmmakers to start having fun again with the genre instead of being so serious and morose all the time. I mean, yeah, there's a place for all that kind of stuff, the artistic stuff, but have some fun with it all again. And that's what the Thanksgiving movie looks like. It looks like they're just having fun. And it's Eli Roth, so it's going to be good too.
Right.
and I wonder how many
Plus,
people have seen the Terrifier films. Who's it's like, how could we? You're going to start seeing not copycat, but I'm wondering like they're like, well, we got to top Damien's like
But
he's
good,
chopping at people.
good. That's what we
Yeah,
want to
right.
happen.
Bring
We
the gore.
want
Push
we
the
want
boundaries,
that.
right?
That's what we've been hoping the whole entire time. Is like that's going to put a fire under people's butts, and they're going to try to top that. We are going to be like. I mean, they've already started doing that. There was the advertisements going out for the latest Saw movie saying, is it gorier than Terrifier 2? And I'm like, that's wow. We're the benchmark now for gore in a movie. This is amazing. And I'm like, I love that though. And it's like, and people are like, how does that make you feel if it's actually gore? I'm like, great. I'm like, I hope so. Because that means that we're encouraging people to start getting back to basics again. And it's like giving the audience what they want to see in these slasher movies. Instead of just sugar coated, watered down bullshit that's been coming out for the
remakes
past 20 years.
constantly.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just like my God.
Yeah, well, definitely the Mean One for holidays. If anybody wants to check it out, it's definitely a killer movie and worth it. It's entertaining. And David, man, like I said, I know we've taken 2 hours of your time and convention time. That's some money, but like we really appreciate you coming on. And if you become the Joker, man, you got to remember us at the Tampa Morgue and come back on because
that would be
you
great.
You go to that status, man. We might not be getting our emails answered.
Definitely put a smile on my face.
Exactly. You have any conventions coming up that
you
want to mention?
Yeah, I'm up in Bangor, Maine this weekend at a convention. Then I'm next week. I think I'm at Scarefest in Kentucky, and then the week after that, I'm up at Nightmare at the Falls or Frightmare at the Falls up in Niagara Falls. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then I have like a few weeks off, and I have Monster Mania in Oaks in November, as well as Days of the Dead in Chicago.
Oh shit!
Wow.
So yeah.
Who is your favorite person to hang out with at the cons? Who is like? I know you hang out with Mosley, and you hung out with Sid Haig, which is
Mosley, Kane's great, stuff like that. It's like Felicia's fantastic. It's like I love hanging out with my cast too. It's like this past weekend I got to hang out with Lou Diamond Phillips and the twins from Breaking Bad and David Harbour for a little bit. So that was really cool.
Wow.
Nice,
so it's like, yeah, it's just why Doug Jones is another great person. I'm finally going to see him again in a few weeks. I haven't seen him since 2019, and I hung out with him at that convention. I was like, Doug's is one of my idols. So I was like, he's just one of the sweetest human beings alive too.
It's awesome. Well, then, like I said, dude, we really appreciate you coming on, and we'll say goodbye to you.
This is like we've done. Is this 14?
14 episodes, yeah.
Wow.
14 episodes, and this is the one. We've had a couple, but this one, when he announced to me that we had you, I was like, and
I waited until I got the confirmation. When I knew David was going to come on, when I talked to his agent, he said, yeah. I was like, I'm waiting until I get the time set before I say anything, because, like you said, you don't want to say shit until it's confirmed. I know it's October, so it's the crazy season for all you guys, but yeah, man, like I said, it's awesome that you came on here. And
thank you.
And we'll say goodbye to you when we sign off of here. And
Okay.
everybody else, thanks as always for listening to the Tampa Morgue. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. Where else?
Amazon, Amazon,
Amazon Music,
everywhere.
pretty much everywhere. And we'll be back, I believe, on Sunday. But we want to thank David Howard Thornton again. David, anything on your way out?
Just big thank you to the fans. It's like y'all have made this past few years, especially this past year, amazing for all of us, and we can't wait to bring you more terrifying goodness.
There you go. Okay, if you don't need to email us, you can message us at thetampamorgue@gmail.com, and we will see you later on in the week. And David, thanks again. We'll say goodbye to you on the flip side.
All
You
right.
guys have a good one, and we'll see you back on the Morgue.
See ya.